We are live, Unchained TV, providing verdict watch coverage of the trial of Wayne Hsiung and Paul Picklesheimer, two men who face now 5+ years in prison for rescuing two piglets. And we have all been waiting. We understand the jury in Utah just a little while ago asked a question of the judge. We're not being told what that question is, but the fact that they asked a question is significant, and we feel that, well, it could mean that a verdict is imminent. Now, we have no way of knowing that for sure. It could be tomorrow. It could be 2 weeks from now. It could be, 5 minutes from now. Obviously, when it comes to a jury creating a verdict, coming down with a verdict, announcing the verdict, we are only guessing. I want to go straight out to Carla Cabral, who is there in Utah with a whole group, a really large group of DXEers, Direct Action Everywhere members. The people who are charged are, one is the co-founder and one is a member of Direct Action Everywhere. Carla, tell us what's happening there. Oh, there's Wayne. Okay, Wayne. Wow, it's so good to see you. What are you feeling right now? Because I am so nervous. We're on pins and needles. We decided to go live because we're all so nervous.
I'm very tired, Jane, and I want to thank you and your entire audience who've been so supportive of us. It was a draining battle over the last week with every word, every question, every piece of evidence we tried to get in, fiercely opposed by the state and by Smithfield. And one of the curious things that happened throughout the case is the judge was referring to Smithfield as the prosecution's client. I think it was a mistake, and he should not have been referring to Smithfield as the prosecution's client, but he actually used that terminology many times, and I just thought that was something interesting to know.
So how are you feeling emotionally? I mean, I have to say that all of the panelists here, we've been waiting since, well, 8 o'clock in the morning, which is 9 o'clock in the morning Mountain Time where Utah is, and we were all on pins and needles. We finally decided, let's go live. Yeah. They just asked a question. You can't tell us what the question is?
I can't say. I can say it was hotly contested in chambers. I think it's probably a good question for us, but it's really hard to say. And ultimately, we did not provide any additional clarification to the jury. I think the reason I think it was good for us is because it shows this is a thoughtful jury that's looking at the instructions closely and does not want to send someone to prison unless they have a real understanding of what the law is. And I think what the law is actually good for us, because it just is the case that in Utah, that anything that is subject to a burglary or a theft must have some value, for example. It must be something that is on someone else's property. It has to be something that's not abandoned. There are a lot of principles in Utah law that help us, and the jury is thinking very hard about these questions to try and help ensure the decision that's made is one that's in compliance with Utah law.
Now, again, I want to ask you how you are feeling. I know that sometimes in journalism they say that's a dumb question, but to me, I think it's the most important question right now. You could go to prison for more than 5 years because you and Paul, well, you rescued these piglets, a couple of piglets who were underweight and sick. And I think you established very clearly in your testimony that they were sick. You could go to prison for 5+ years. How are you feeling about that right now?
I mean, it's scary for sure. Like I was on a call with my dad this morning, and there were some tears shed between both of us. I got on a video call with my friend Christina, who's watching my very sick and old cat, and I listened to him meow, and I was thinking to myself, in literally minutes, I could be in a prison and separated from him for the rest of my life. But I also think about Lily, and throughout the trial, my legal system will tell you, I've had this image of Lily on the day we rescued her as my screensaver. And so every time I shut down my windows, I see Lily like wrapped up in a blanket, nice and warm and safe. And the first morning after we took her out, and I just know, like, she was in such a desperate state. We had to rescue her. We couldn't have left her behind. Oh, that's actually Lizzie. It was equally sweet, and also in very bad shape. So it's a combination of things. One, feeling obviously concerned about what could happen within minutes. I'm just waiting for the phone call to come. But then also very inspired by all the media attention, the support we've received, and including in the New York Times. The New York Times piece just dropped. It's an amazing piece, and we're just really grateful to Andrew Jacobs for writing, once again, an incredible piece about transparency in factory farms.
There it is. It just came up. It hit in the New York Times a little while ago. I just grabbed it as a screen grab. And it says the Utah trial has highlighted what the defendants argue is a lack of transparency for the treatment of animals at large corporate farms. So that's really significant. I want to take a second, if you can, Wayne, to just stand there and stay there while I play your final words. 1 minute.
Things that will happen. Companies will be a little more compassionate to the creatures under their stewardship. Governments will be a little more open to animal cruelty complaints. And maybe, just maybe, a baby pig like Lily won't have to starve to death on the floor of a factory farm. The animals of this earth have given us so much. Maybe you probably know this yourself. They've given us food. They've given us clothing. They've given us their love. If you have a dog and cat in your home, as I do. All they've asked for us in return is to be good stewards of their welfare. To recognize what Rick Pittman recognized, that we all have a duty to be kind. And your decision today, if you make a good one, will make the world a little bit of a kinder place, even for a baby pig in a factory farm. Thank you very much.
Wow. Wayne, you had said that you thought maybe you were tired, you weren't sure you did the best job. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. What was going through you as you said that? This was after a long, grueling day. They didn't allow you to come back today after a rest when you would have been fresh. We're at literally, I don't know what it was, in the evening after a day of court and closing arguments and figuring out the jury questionnaire, the jury instructions. You had to do this. I mean, how did you do that?
I mean, it's been very hard. I'll be honest. I mean, I consider myself a pretty resilient person, but this week has been incredibly draining. And I said last night, honestly, it's not even so much the physical or even the mental exertion. It's taken a toll on my soul. I'll say much more about this after the verdict comes out, but in chambers and behind the scenes, there's just been this bureaucratization of injustice. Like I think the way to describe it is, Franz Kafka wrote this book. I don't even remember the name of the book, about how people get lost in bureaucracies today.
The trial.
And trapped. The trial is one of them. Actually, the trial is one of them, about how there's these Byzantine set of rules and you're constantly pulled in one direction or the next, and there's no rhyme or reason behind any of it. And that is the case so often in the legal system, but it's also the case that if you're powerful and wealthy like Smithfield, that doesn't happen to you. It's only for the rest of us. And of course, we see this most with the animals. They're the ones getting jerked and pulled and even slaughtered by this Byzantine system of blades and machines and assembly lines that is literally ripping them to pieces, sometimes while they're still alive. And a good friend of mine, Bruce Friedrich, texted me this morning, and he actually emailed me before my last trial and said that suffering is part of service, something along those lines. And while this has been an exhausting experience and it's definitely exposed me to many more of the failings of our criminal justice system, it has also taught me even more to empathize with others who are caught up in various terrifying systems.
So do you think the verdict will come in soon? This is the New York Times article that was just published. Animal rights activists await verdict in Smithfield Piglet case. You see the activists behind you. You have at least probably more, 100 or more activists who are there supporting you. the New York Times wrote that the FBI, they did the backstory, how the FBI raided sanctuaries, animal sanctuaries, slicing off a portion of a piglet's ear in search of DNA evidence of this crime, when indeed the two animals are worth at best $42 each. And you made a very strong case that they're worth nothing because so many animals are just put in dumpsters like this. This is a bunch of dead piglets. This is a photograph you took from your video of Operation Death Star. Let me ask you, Wayne, do you get a sense that there's a battle going on amongst the jurors, that there are some who are not looking at them as things, and others who are saying, well, they went in there, it's private property?
I think there is a battle going on. That is one indication I think we received from the juror questions, even before this point. And I think the jurors are kind of struggling with different intuitions, like so many people in our country are when it comes to eating animals and killing animals. On the one hand, we don't want to see animals suffer. On the other hand, you know, we think that eating meat is proper and normal. On the one hand, we hate to see this undercover footage of factory farms. On the other hand, we might not like the idea that someone might break into someone else's property in order to obtain that footage. And, you know, ultimately the courtroom has been the place where so many contentious issues in American history have been decided. What our relationship with animals will be now and in the future, I think will be decided in the courtroom as well. In this case, is going to be one such example.
I have to play for everybody. We've got an incredible panel here of people who are going to comment, but I want to play, I think, was the worst comment made at this trial by the prosecutor in his closing argument. Listen to this, comparing pigs to a can of dented soup.
Analyze for just a moment the reasoning being demonstrated here tonight. I think it's clear that the pigs were stolen, they were taken, and they were not returned. In fact, Mr. Hsiung stated he didn't want to return. That's that. Imagine the use of the word rescue in some other context. Suppose you were in the grocery store and you saw a can with dents in it, and you thought to yourself, oh my goodness, that can has a dent. It has the potential of going bad. I better rescue that can, put it in my purse, take it out of the store. Or imagine you're at DQ, you see a dripping ice cream cone up there that the clerk just put on the counter. Oh dear, that cone is dripping off the side. I better take it so that it doesn't make a mess on the floor. Or
so he's comparing, and I know there's a problem with the sound here. Everybody is pretty quiet. I think it's just actually you and the people talking behind you. Maybe just tell them to just to talk a little lower for a second, because it's hard to hear you. But Wayne, I mean, he compared pigs to a can of soup and an ice cream cone.
I hope that the jury is listening to those words and appreciating how absurd they are, because when you kick a can of soup, it doesn't cry. When you cut it open, it doesn't bleed. And a can of soup doesn't have a mother who will fight for her if she's taken away. You know, I mean, I think the absurdity of the prosecution's position is made manifest by the arguments they made in court. And this is one powerful example. There is a difference between an inanimate object and a living creature that can cry out in pain. And the jurors hopefully will recognize it as well.
Were you able to make that case in your closing argument? Were you able to come back after he said that and rebut that?
No, unfortunately, that was his rebuttal statement, and that's the last statement in court because the prosecution has the burden of proof. And honestly, I did such a bad job with my closing statement. I know a lot of people said, oh, you did okay, and I'm glad you played that clip. But I just feel like my energy level was so low at that point, and I was so drained. I was fighting hard to try and have it happen in the morning, but, you know, I did my best, and let's hope it was enough.
Well, we all thought it was great. And in a way, you know, and there's the other defendant, Paul Picklesheimer. Paul, thank you for coming in. And I think your attorney was even congratulated by the judge for doing a masterful job, Mary Corcoran, on several occasions. The judge was all over the map. The judge, are you going away, Wayne? Oh, well, can you take off your mask for 1 second, or are you? Maybe we can hear you with the mask. But
I can take it off.
oh, okay. I mean, I don't want to endanger anybody. I don't want to endanger anybody. So only if you feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, no, you know what? I'll just hold it myself. That way I'm not breathing on Carla.
Yeah, okay. But let me ask you this question. Do you feel the judge was sort of all over the map? Like he started out very hostile towards you, and then at one point he complimented your attorney and said she did a masterful job. And it was like sort of a back and forth. Do you think he was struggling with the idea of, is it going to be on my conscience if these guys go to prison for 11 years? I'm going to have to live with that too. Is that possibly why he threw out those 2 charges that basically cut the potential you could do in time in half?
You know, I think he threw out the charges because I think he just used his legal mind for that objectively and knew that the evidence wasn't there. And to back up to that point, when my attorney tried to argue for a dismissal of my charges or a direct judgment from the judge after the state rested their case, I really, a direct judgment, for anybody who doesn't know, is extremely rare. Yet when I was listening to Mary, Miss Corporon, argue it, I thought we were going to get it for me. So the judge was right. She did an amazing job. But back to the point about the judge, I think he's literally moody, and maybe that's because he's been under the weather. But I've definitely seen his mood go up and down. He's been more against us sometimes. I've seen him scowling at Wayne for saying some things, or smiling at Wayne when he says other things. Somebody said they thought they saw a tear welling up in his eye at one point. So I think he's got a wrestling match going on in his head. I think he's trying to balance a few things. I think that I think it's kind of unfair, but I think he prejudiced us I think he views Smithfield as the victim in the case, and he's said as much many times without saying alleged in front. And I think he feels like he needs to see these people convicted because there's a victim. And I think that's how he came into the case. So then on top of that, I think he's got also this idea that, yeah, these people are making a pretty valid argument. I think he expected us to come in and not have much to back up anything that would help the facts of the case. But I think we've made an amazing case. I mean, if it were, of course, if I were a jury, I would absolutely acquit Wayne and I both. I think I'm pretty obvious acquittal. And I think maybe I'm 50-50 in terms of what this jury might think. But with Wayne, I just really buy into the value argument myself. I think intent is something that people can argue about a little bit, but you've got to meet all the qualifications. And I cannot accept an idea that these 2 piglets had any value whatsoever to anybody except for the inherent priceless value that they have to us in our community as our equals as earthlings.
Well, I mean, they didn't even know they were missing until the article came out in the New York Times that played your video that the jury was never allowed to see. If you're just joining us, we're on Verdict Watch. The jury just asked a question. We don't know what that question is, and they're not allowed to tell us what that question is. But a lot of times when they go in with one question, it means that they've got one thing to decide, and that means they're closer. Now, that's a wild guess. They could be there for days for all we know. But we decided to go live because we were all of us are standing around, biting our nails, waiting. We were like, well, we should go live and see what's happening on the ground. And now we're talking to one of the defendants, Paul Picklesheimer. I have to ask you, you seem like a very strong, tough guy, even though you have a heart of gold. But are you nervous? I mean, I'm nervous. I'm not 5 years in prison.
Great question. I got to say, I'm not nervous. I'm excited. Really, I've always, long before any of this happened, I've had different opportunities to plead out of the case. My initial plea offers involved testifying against Wayne. Of course, I was never going to do that. But the longer I held out, the better the offers got. And to the point that they were, pleading no contest to this or that. And by the end of it, they were willing to let me plead no contest to a misdemeanor, and with a plea in abeyance. So as long as I just essentially, quote unquote, behaved for a year, it would just disappear. But by that point, I was feeling pretty good about the facts of the case. And I think the jury is wrestling a little bit with, honestly, the facts of the case really lie in certainly my favor. But I feel like they still want to maybe view me the way that the prosecutor's closing statement viewed me. Now, he painted me as a vital part of the team because I have the camera, and I'll own that. It's just that the law doesn't say because I was there as a camera person that I'm, guilty of the crime. It says quite the opposite very clearly. So I haven't been nervous. If I'm convicted and let off in handcuffs, I'll start to get nervous then. If I'm in prison, I'll be miserable in different ways. I love my freedom so much. I love being outside in the sunshine, being able to walk away from situations I want to walk away from. And in there, you can't do that. And it's a scary place. As an animal rights activist and somebody who's researched prisons very deeply over the last 3 years, and since 2017, really, when I realized I might be going, the similarities are very clear to me. There are two instances where earthlings are essentially caged up, treated as property, called property, abused to no end in so many instances, and the public is so aware of the issue. So yeah, I don't take it lightly whatsoever. I really don't want to go to jail, but I'm out here in the sunshine, surrounded by friends and lots of support online. So I'm happy. I'm having a great time, and it may come to an end tonight or whenever the verdict comes, but I'm going to enjoy it until then.
Well, I want to say that we've got an incredible panel. I thank you, Paul, for staying right there for a second, because we've got a top New York City attorney, Nathan Semmel, on, along with Marina Bolotnikova, who's covering this for The Intercept. So I want to know, Nathan, do you have legal questions for Paul that might give us an understanding of, like, are we 5 minutes away from a verdict or 5 days away from a verdict?
Well, obviously, the question that I have, which is what everybody has, is what was that jury? What was the note that came from the jury? But I know Paul can't speak to that, and that has to be respected. Nothing jumps out to me. Questions that I have other than that. Well, you know what? I'd like to. This is something that's been on my mind throughout, because unfortunately, there's been so little media allowed in the courtroom. But I'm really curious about what kind of vibe you were getting from the jury, throughout. What kind of, were you getting the head nods while Mary was, summing up, when Wayne was summing up? What about when the prosecutor was closing?
Good question. Paul?
Yeah, great question. I'll say this, a couple things about the jury. One, I feel good about the jury going in, and I got to take my hat off to mostly Wayne, but also Mary, for getting us to the point where we were able to have our 5 strikes each, and the state was only allowed to have the 5 strikes that they should by law be allowed. The judge tried to give them 10 to match us. So that was a big win that's paying dividends throughout the case. And I feel that we had an excellent team who, even on very short notice, we're talking about a matter of hours, 5 people were permitted to see from each side, permitted to see the names of the jurors, and we were permitted, which I would think should be obvious, to search their public-facing social media, that kind of stuff. And from that, we were able to infer a lot, combined with their questionnaire. And what I think we got is a lot of people who are smart people, and I think they've had poker faces during the trial, which is fine. They've been smiling and jovial when the judge makes a joke, or Rick Pittman says that thing about, well, I tell everybody if we fight, we lose. But they've kept their emotions pretty under control, but they've been attentive. And I think attentive favors us, because I think the facts of the case favor us. And so as long as they're paying attention, they've taken lots of notes. They've clearly submitted the most questions that any juror that this judge has ever seen has submitted. So they're engaged, and I think it's a good group of people. And I feel comfortable with them. I wish it wasn't this way, but all things considered, I feel comfortable with them making a decision about my guilt or innocence.
And Marina Bolotnikova of The Intercept, which is covering this trial, and pretty much I'm saying that The Intercept, myself, and the New York Times right now are the only ones who seem to be covering inside this trial. Marina, what are your questions for Paul Picklesheimer, one of the defendants?
Hi, thank you for convening this, Jane. The Salt Lake Tribune also covered it today, by the way, and that's a major newspaper in Salt Lake City, and it's gotten some good coverage on local TV stations. But I've had some questions about some of the like legal issues that I'm still wondering about. So the jury is not allowed to know that whether or not the charges are felonies or misdemeanors, right? Or how much prison time they
are not allowed to know. I'm not a lawyer, but I thought they would be instructed in the beginning of the trial, at least, that we're facing 2 felony counts of burglary, 1 misdemeanor count of theft, and as well as the classes. But the judge has strictly ruled that they are not to know that. Of course, he argued that they should not factor that into their decision, but I at least wish they knew.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yes.
yeah, sorry.
No,
Go
go
on.
ahead. Second question.
It's hard for me to imagine them not, I don't know, going home and at least like looking up what's a, I don't know if it's second or third degree burglary, but and also they do know that one of your burglary charges was completely dismissed, right? This yesterday afternoon.
They do know that was announced before jury instruction. So as long as they were paying attention at that point in time, they know that. It wasn't in the jury instruction, but it was read aloud, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Simone Reyes, you have a question for Paul.
I really just had a question because I think we were all extremely moved and concerned, hearing about the companion animals that Wayne has. And I think for any of us that might be facing time away, whether it's in jail or anywhere else, we worry about that. Do you have companion animals, and how much does that factor into everything that could be coming forward and hopefully not coming forward?
I'm nobody's guardian. I had a son who's a cat named Buddy when I lived in West Virginia. And when I moved to Chicago suburbs, my mom adopted Buddy for me. And we, if I'm in jail and we're on the phone, we'll get Buddy on there to purr a little bit, and we'll talk to each other. When I go visit, it's my favorite thing to do in the world. But I'm nobody's guardian, so I don't have to worry about if anybody's going to be okay without me. So I don't have to deal with that. I know it's going to be a hard thing for Wayne, but I know Wayne also knows that his children are in good hands while he's gone.
Yes, and everybody think of questions, but I have one. I mean, are you expecting, God forbid, it comes back with a conviction and they find you guilty? Are you expecting to go to jail right away? Like, are they going to cuff you and take you out of the courthouse? Or are you expecting that you're going to remain free pending appeal because you have so many appellate issues? They refuse to play the video of the crime, the alleged crime that was happening. You videotaped with this incredible 3D technology that allows 360-degree views. You went in there, big, strong guy carrying all this equipment that was lent by a high-tech firm, and you did a video called Operation Death Star that the jury was not able to see, featuring such horrors that just uploading portions of it get PTSD. So are you expecting that you're going to stay out pending appeal? Because you have so many grounds for appeal.
Jane, that's a good question. And a few months ago, based on this judge's history, and we know how he rules, this is our third judge in this case. Our first couple of judges who we had, our attorneys advised us that we don't know what to expect in terms of a sentence. It could be something on the shorter end, the 30, 60, 90 day, or it could be something in the prison realm. But when we got this judge, they informed us that y'all got the hammer now. This guy is known for sentencing people to longer sentences than most judges. I Google him and keep up with him, and he argues sometimes that he's like, hey, I'm sentencing you to 0 to 5 years in prison, and I think you should spend all that time in there. But I know this parole board might let you out, and I think that's unfortunate. So that's where he's coming from. So I think it's technically possible that we could be free to go home or stay in the state of Utah, maybe pending sentencing, which will take about 2 months probably to put up the report. But I do think that's unlikely because we have a felony charge. And in the United States, there are not many felons who are convicted and then allowed to go home awaiting sentencing. So I think the most likely outcome, if for Wayne or myself, if we're convicted, will be to be put in handcuffs and let out the back door. Maybe there's a way that they do that for Wayne, but not me, because Wayne has 2 prior felony burglary convictions in North Carolina. But I think we'll probably get put in cuffs, driven to the Purgatory Correctional Facility in Hurricane nearby, and then we'll await sentencing there. Upon sentencing, it's interesting. I think that going into it, they said that this judge would probably want prison for us. Prison would mean a 0 to 5 sentence, automatic. And then once you're in there, and you might not necessarily go to the prison, they might have us in county jails, but in there you're doing your 0 to 5, but you go before a release board about every year. So we'd have 4 opportunities to get out. And that could be a double-edged sword, because people do get out very quick sometimes in Utah because it has enough beds in the state to house everybody, but it's far understaffed. They don't have enough corrections officers. So the parole board has been kicking people out left and right with drug crimes, violent crimes. But those people getting kicked out are able to say, I'm so sorry, I did the wrong thing. I've seen the light. I won't do it again. Please let me out now. And Wayne and I won't be able to say that. You know, we can take ownership of what we did. We can say that we never mean distress to any individual humans in any way. But at the end of the day, Lily and Lizzie have been living their best life outside in the world's best conditions for 5 years, and I can't regret a thing about that.
You are watching live coverage, Verdict Watch. One of the defendants, Paul Picklesheimer, is there talking to us from Utah outside court. I know Mick Davoudian has a question. Take it away, Mick. What's your question for one of the defendants here, Paul Picklesheimer?
Hey, Paul, Mick Davoudian. We're all thinking about you guys. So I have a question with regards to prison. We're talking in generalities. I have no idea what that means. I mean, I've never been to prison. I've never been visit anyone in prison. So I mean, you hear about country clubs where all the rich and famous go all the way to like Rikers Island or whatever. So do you have any idea what kind of prison you might go to?
Yeah, great question. There's one thing about prisons and jails, from the big picture, jails are usually where you go, county jails, if you're going to serve up to a year. Prisons are usually where you go if you're going to serve more than a year. Sometimes it takes a while to get placed in a prison. The benefits of a jail are you're usually only going to be there for a year, hopefully. But the benefits to prison is that once you're housed in a prison, you have a lot more amenities, hopefully. You know, you have just a little bit better access to commissary and that kind of stuff. But you might just also be closer to gang activity and that kind of thing. In Utah, they have a mixed bag in terms of possibilities. For many years, there was Draper State Prison in Utah, and it was, from everything I understand, a really scary place that was really hard to be. Not that any place is going to be a cakewalk, but it was very old, and therefore there were a lot of blind spots for the cameras, which leads to opportunities for inmates to be abused or exploited. And but they have just built what I call the Whole Foods prison. This is the brand new prison up in West Salt Lake City by the airport. And it's, again, I mentioned the comparison to what inmates go through and what animals go through. It's interesting to see those industries repeating some of the same words. They claim that this prison now has so much great outdoor access, so much natural sunlight, all these other amenities that you usually hear about a humane farm. They talk about it as if it's a humane prison. And truth be told, I've seen the pictures. I'd rather be in a place that has better outdoor access and these big windows in the day room. That's where you might spend time during the day. But we really don't know where we'll end up. We'll probably just go to a jail first, and then they may house us in the prison, or they may house us in the local jails. I think that there will be a concern that we'll be big targets for exploitation or abuse. There are people will know who we are, and they'll know that we have a big support network of people helping out. And there's a lot of people in there who have no support network whatsoever. They can't afford any commissary or anything else. They're in there for 20 years. And so if they're willing to try to exploit us in different ways to get our assistance to go to them, that paints a big target on us. And that's scary to think about. And there's also a lot of racial dynamics at play too. Every prison in every state is very different. But Utah is a state with a high population of white people, including some of the more notorious white supremacist gangs. And there's a good chance that I'll be pressured to try to fall in line with them upon entry. And to resist that, it becomes a very dangerous thing. So it's, again, I think I'm proud to do this. I'm happy to do this. I'm excited. But please I'm not a sucker. Don't take for a minute that I don't take this very seriously, and I really don't want to be in there. But I am willing to take that risk. And with anything in life, whatever comes, I'm going to try to make the most of it. And I'm going to try to come back out better and stronger and with a better understanding of another system of oppression. And because I think that the fight really includes them all.
All right. You are watching live coverage. We are on Verdict Watch. You're talking to one of the defendants, Paul Picklesheimer, who could go to prison for 5.5 years. Marina, you have a question for Paul. Go ahead.
Hi. Yes. I am curious, Paul, or did Paul just leave?
Ask the question, and she
I'm
can
curious
translate.
what your thinking was around possibly taking a mistrial yesterday, and why did you, ultimately decide not to? If you can, however much you're able to talk about
There's a
it.
couple reasons we declined the mistrial opportunity. I mean, it was frankly offensive. I'll say that right off the bat, because I don't think it's fair that we were only allowed 1 week for this trial. We have so much evidence and so many witnesses that are very pertinent to the facts of the case. And all week long, we were not allowed to present any of the evidence unless it pertained to these 2 specific piglets. When that really erases my whole alibi. I'm being charged with burglary and theft, yet we've got hours and hours and hours of footage, including the Death Star, that shows me not touching pigs, so I felt sad that I couldn't introduce that. And then, of course, to the value and the intent arguments, we want to show that we didn't go there to rescue animals. Open rescue and open investigation is something very near and dear to my heart. And I think it's very important to do. Something people might not realize is that 9 out of 10 times you go on a farm, you're not bringing anybody out. There's so many reasons you couldn't. And it's just not something that you do. What you do is you prepare. You prepare to take somebody out if it's a dire situation and you feel like you have the means to take care of them, or the ability, or you feel like there might be a way to place them, but you can't do it lightly. It doesn't help anybody to get somebody out of a bad situation and they don't have a good situation to go to. So that our intent was to investigate and just talk about the gestation crates that were there, and they took all of that away from us. And that's a welfare issue. And then as far as property goes, property's got to have some value. Our jury instructions do say that the property, it's got to be under 500 in order to be a theft at the level that they charged it, but it's got to have some positive value. And we argue that these piglets had negative value or zero value to Smithfield Foods, and we feel good about that. But we can't make that case clear to the jury if we can't show the image of hundreds of dead baby piglets and one mom in the dumpster right outside where Lily and Lizzie were. We can't show video that shows how they were limping and the conditions of other piglets who were frankly had no chance. Like, there's often animals who you don't rescue them because they won't make it off the property. That's all too common. And so we were gagged from talking about anything other than these 2 piglets until at the very end, the state's own witnesses started to brag about Smithfield's animal welfare. And that was a big mistake on their part that didn't end up hurting them, because when they did that, that opened up the door to us presenting all of our animal cruelty elements, all of our evidence that relates to welfare and value and intent. Yet the judge said, well, it does open the door, but it's Friday, so you don't get to show it. You can choose between having those 2 witnesses struck, or you can elect to have a mistrial. We don't want a mistrial because, frankly, the state has not done the best job, in my opinion, of putting on evidence against us. And if they were to be given another opportunity to do so, even in the case of a hung jury or something, I'm confident that they would do a better job than they did this first go around. So we wanted to roll with it, even though it was very unjust. And the icing on the cake that was really weird is that the court person who was recording the proceedings from St. George News, he asked the judge, he said, hey, those last 2 witnesses, their testimony was stricken from the record, right? And the judge says, yes. And he said, do you want me to remove them from the memory cards? And the judge said, yes. Now, hold on. To me, this is an issue that hasn't been talked about much yet. And I don't think I'm confused on what I heard. But to me, it sounded like the judge told this journalist, a member of the journalism community who should have First Amendment right to freedom of press, to delete footage because it was stricken from the jury. Now, okay, strike it from the jury. The jury can be told to forget about it, but it's still part of the whole case. And to not allow the media, the people watching, to see that footage, because some of that footage I would love to see. That footage included their veterinarian arguing that it's essentially a negative value for Lily and Lizzie if they're valued at $42 a piece and each one needs 60 or whatever dollars worth of care. And there was other things that they said that we would love to really honestly use in our closing statement. But yeah, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but yeah, that was really surprising to me.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, go ahead, Marina.
I heard about that, and the judge has a lot of discretion over what he will allow to be recorded, but after there's a recording that exists that he has permitted, he's not allowed. I don't think he's not allowed to tell a journalist to delete it. I mean, really, I don't know why that reporter would have even asked.
The camera was there to serve as the public, and everybody in the gallery has that in their eyes and their ears. And so everybody who is considered the public watching at home should be able to hear that too. And if I'm not confused and that's what happened and that journalist no longer has that footage, I think there's been a First Amendment violation. I just don't know if the camera person will care enough to raise the issue, because if you remember, Ms. Bolotnikova herself had permission to record the WebEx, and it was taken away so the judge could implement his own handpicked journalist to record the case. And I don't want to talk too bad about this journalist at all. He's been a nice person, and I appreciate the coverage. But I feel like access journalism is something I bet a lot of y'all are familiar with. And it felt to me like the journalist was willing to comply with deleting the footage, because if he didn't, he might risk not having access in the future.
Yeah, and let me just say this. It would still be, I think, available on WebEx. The WebEx feed would probably still have that. Are you preparing? Well, first of all, Maryam, you have a question. I don't want to leave you out, and Karen may have a question. Maryam, what's your question for Paul Picklesheimer, one of the defendants, waiting right now? We are on verdict watch to find out if he's going to go to prison for 5 years. He could end up in handcuffs at the end of the day, or he could walk free. We certainly hope he walks free. Maryam?
Hi, Paul. This is so good to see you. I've been following. So my question is, do you think that because of the extreme censorship throughout this trial, that other groups, other animal rights groups, advocacy groups, to pressure to see the conditions of the animals inside Smithfield Foods, or to investigate also, or initiate an investigation of their own?
Great question. I think the outcome of the trial might play a factor in that. And oh, hi, Maryam. Okay, sorry. And what I actually hope, though, I hope it has an inspiring effect. I know our people here, we sort of view this as almost, the test run. If you believe in the value of open rescue and risking freedom in order to get these issues into the court and therefore hopefully into more media and to argue and maybe set some precedent, maybe have an appellate court rule on something that can really help others in the future. We believe that's a very valuable tool to try to use, but we don't have a ton of evidence because so few people do it. So this will be an opportunity for us to find out what kind of impact this can have. What mistakes do we make? What could we do better? And my feeling is, of course, Wayne had a trial in North Carolina earlier, but it didn't have the same villain, as WH Group / Smithfield Foods and the FBI. And so I think this is an opportunity to really test this theory out, test this tactic out, and see how it plays out. And then just go back to the design process, learn what we could do better, learn what we did wrong, learn what worked well, and then keep trying. And I'm hoping that more and more people will be willing to try based on whatever we learn. We'll make mistakes and other people can learn from our mistakes.
Well, I want to ask you, there are so many questions that occur to me about what you are going through right now. Are you already working on appeals? In other words, like before your opening statements, I assume you were working throughout the trial on your closing statements. Are you already working on appeals? Because it seems like you have many grounds for appeals. The fact that they had this as an anonymous jury, which is normally just reserved for organized crime cases or terrorism cases. The fact that they didn't at one point give you the last names of any of the jurors, hindering your ability to do research on these jurors, to go on their social media and find out if they're bacon lovers, for example. The fact that they didn't allow you to play video of the crime, the alleged crime of you guys going in there in progress. The list goes on. You can give me other examples that you know of that I probably don't know of. Are you prepping that appeals just in the possibility that in any minute now they could come back and say you're guilty of something?
Yeah, I'll say this. I don't think anyone is prepping documents at this point for appeals, but all throughout the case, our attorneys are definitely appeal-minded. They say things like a judge will rule a certain way. They know the judge is not going to overturn his ruling, but like you'll hear them say, they want to preserve it on record, their objection to it, so that when the appeals board hopefully looks at it, they'll say, like, yes, the attorney did object to it. Mr. Hsiung joined in that objection. So you're both, you know, open to being included in this potential appeal. So there's a list a mile long. I would say, we mentioned before, this had the most questions from a jury of any trial this judge has ever seen. It'll have one of the most, one of the thickest stacks of an appeal that anyone has seen, because there's so many opportunities, and the appeals courts are really hard to make progress in at the local level. The judges are golf buddies, and but the higher up you get, you know, maybe this goes to the Supreme Court someday, and maybe it ends up with the value argument being a legit, like, you know, solidified, and then all of a sudden it isn't illegal to go in and trespass. Well, the trespass would still be illegal, but to rescue somebody who had no value. And that would be a dream come true. We want the right to rest. We want everyone to have the right to be rescued from distress or exploitation, regardless of their market value. But we'll take what we can get. I think all of y'all know that with animal rights and social change in general, you're scratching and clawing year after year to get the smallest progress sometimes. So it's all about the longer fight. And so we'll take what we can get.
Karen LaCava, a vegan realtor, vegan caterer, your question for Paul Picklesheimer.
Hi, Paul. Good to see you. I have a question of your thoughts about Andrew's testimony, how he accidentally allowed the jury and the prosecutors to know that you guys were there the night before, and how that affects the premeditation part.
Yeah, great question. I don't think it really affects the elements or the facts in any way. I do think it helps. I think it makes the jury think a certain thing, you know, whether that thing's true or not. I mean, certainly, like Wayne said, Andrew literally misspoke. Nobody saw Lily and Lizzie on a previous night. You know, in a barn like this, if you see Lily and Lizzie, you're not going to find them again. They wouldn't be there the next day, probably because they'd be gassed. But yeah, Andrew's testimony was a good example of how brave you've got to be to take the stand, and what's at stake, because the smallest little couple words can open up a door to a line of questioning that can, you know, maybe damage the case. And we took advantage of such situations when the prosecution's witnesses would open the door to some things. The jurors helped us out a lot. My favorite part of the trial, still to this day, I think, is when a juror asked the worker at Smithfield, or I think maybe the executive or the larger boss, well, how many security guards are on site on the whole location? And he said 2. And then Wayne was able to go up and question him and start asking about this, like, well, how long is the farm from one end to another? Oh, 20 plus miles. How long does it take to drive from one end to another? Oh, over 30 minutes. So as the prosecutors set out in the beginning, this idea of this sweet little red barn with white picket fence in the Milford Valley, that question from a juror helped us illuminate the fact that we're talking about a factory farm that is 3 times the size of the city of San Francisco in length. So that was great. I thought Andrew did actually an amazing job all the way until the one part that got picked apart a little bit. But I don't think it changes the facts of the case at all. I think it just allowed them to sort of paint us as these repeat offenders. But I think people got the idea that this is what we do anyway.
Let me ask you this question. One of the most shocking things to me, and I thought I was unable to be shocked by anything the animal agriculture industry does, is that they have 2 veterinarians for something like 1 million pigs. Did I get that right? And did the jury hear that? And if they heard that, I would think they'd be thinking, oh my God, 2 vets for 1 million pigs?
Yeah, absolutely. And this goes back to the issue of what questions they'll allow us to ask and what they won't, because the person who said that, the Smithfield employee, went on to say, well, those vets train the employees on how to do procedures. Okay, so he sort of mitigated that, saying like, well, of course, these 2 vets aren't responsible for seeing everybody. Not that the idea that they train employees, because what I would like to ask is, well, tell us, are some of the things that these vets train the employees to do are to slice off the male baby pig's testicles with no anesthesia at 2 days old? Is some of the things these vets train the employees to do to cut off everyone's tail, because as piglets grow, they will bite each other's tails off? Is it also a thing that they're trained to do, is how to remove the front teeth to keep them from biting each other because they're in torment and they naturally fight. So these are all questions that the judge, before that door was opened, would never have allowed us to ask. But yeah, when you talk about vets training and training employees with how to manage quote unquote pigs, it is not how to spend money on antibiotics or x-rays whatsoever. It is how to prep them to get to a certain weight by a certain time so they can make profit from them.
So Nathan, I know you had another legal question. Nathan is our lawyer here joining us from New York City. Your question.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that, you know, your counsel and Wayne's counsel, and I'm sure you weighed in on you know, at every moment. You all did just a magnificent job in defending this case. I mean, you've already kept the jury out on what I think they probably thought, what the judge probably thought was a slam dunk case, and you've kept them out last night and most of today already. And you know, I think you got a real good chance here. I really do. And my fingers are crossed for you. I do have one question regarding a strategy question. Was there any discussion regarding asking the judge to include the lesser included charge of trespass and having the jury consider that as well?
Thanks. That's a great question. And from my part, no. That's something people thought of, but because the thing is, I could have had a trespass plea deal if I wanted it. You know, I don't want that. Like, if what I want to do is find out what this jury has to say. And yeah, so I think it's actually great that a lot of our co-defendants pled out early on, because it shows people that it's great and okay to go ahead and investigate farms. And if you're facing legal repercussions, short of turning state's evidence and, you know, confessing about your co-defendants, do what you got to do. Like, take care of yourself. This is your life. Don't throw it away because you're feeling macho or something. But I know Wayne was always going to be in it to the end, so he'd have no interest of just getting a trespass out of it. So the idea that the trespass could, you know, the jury might convict on the trespass, and then that would give them like a mental ability to, you know, acquit on the more serious charges. Wayne doesn't want that. He doesn't want that at all, and I don't want that either. There were times earlier in the trial where maybe if they had, or like months before the trial, when I thought things weren't going to go as the way they have, where I might have been sympathetic to an idea of a trespass with a diversion instead of even going into it, or plea in abeyance. That kind of thing, but they weren't offering that deal at that time, and I took that deal off the table by the time we got. Honestly, once we got the jury, I felt I had a little more house money to work with, because I felt good about our jury. I felt like they were a smart group of folks, and so I don't want the trespass. I want to be acquitted fully, and I think Wayne feels the same.
I think there's a good chance also. I mean, obviously this is all pure speculation, but I think there's a pretty good chance that they won't be able to come to an agreement, a unanimous jury. And they could come in after a few hours and say, Your Honor, we are hopelessly deadlocked. I've heard it many times in previous cases. Sometimes the judge will say, go back and try harder. I've literally heard judges say that. Do you think that there's any chance, Paul, for that? Because you get to see the faces of the jurors, which we have not been able to see.
Yeah, you know, I think their faces haven't told me much, but I think the judge has tipped his hand. I think he believes that they've been kept for a long time already. And I think he feels like he wants to let these people get on with their life. So I don't think he's going to let them deliberate for like more than a day or two. I think he would cut them loose at that point and declare a hung jury. And, you know, it could be a hung jury for Wayne and maybe an acquittal for me, or who knows what, or maybe it's conviction for Wayne and hung jury for me. But yeah, I don't have a good sense from those jurors. What I do like is that I feel like they're a group of people that can talk to each other and work through things and argue constructively. And I don't think there's anybody on there that somebody would feel like, oh, I just don't even want to be in the room with this person anymore. So I think we've made a good space for this jury to really analyze the facts and come to a unanimous decision. And I believe certainly that should be 2 acquittals.
Now, I don't know, this judge doesn't seem to play by the rules when he sort of said, well, if you guys don't hurry up, we're going to have a mistrial, which I've never heard a judge just saying that. Usually one side or the other says we need a mistrial, not the judge. But Nathan, the judge, and if you could discuss this with Paul, he doesn't have the power, I think, to tell the jury, stop deliberating now. Your deadline is 5 o'clock today, or I'm going to declare a mistrial. Does he?
No, I think they would probably first have to send a note out saying that they are hopelessly deadlocked. At that point, it would probably be up to the judge as to how long he wants to, continue this. He will tell them to go back, just like Paul said. He will tell them, or like you said, Jane, he will tell them to go back in and try harder. He might even read what's called an Allen charge. We don't have to get into into the weeds on that, but there will come a point in time where he will say, okay, enough is enough, but the jury will lead on that, and then the judge will respond.
What is your question, Simone Reyes, for Paul?
Basically, when all of this is said and done, what is next for you? Is it more of the same? Would you consider writing a book about this trial? Because I think everybody here that's watching this believes very, very, very strongly that this trial is going to go down in the history books, no matter what the decision.
Yeah, thanks, Simone. That's a great question. And I absolutely think there should be books written about this, or a docuseries or a documentary. We do have a lot of talented documentarians around at this time. I would love to write a book someday. I know Wayne is, even farther down the path for that. So yeah, those are all things I think we should really consider, because the more people that get exposed to this trial, I think that serves our collective goals well. And the immediate future, though, is we got to start preparing for March in Wisconsin. And that's going to depend on if we're inside or outside. Maybe Wayne's inside and I'm outside, but we're both also facing multiple felony charges in Wisconsin and Dane County for the open rescue of 3 beagles from a breeding facility / laboratory. And I'm excited for that next step. So we'll take whatever we learned here and apply it to that next trial.
Well, I have to ask a question. How do you do it? I think I'm more nervous than you are right now. We went live because we were all waiting and calling each other back and forth. I said, we're all going crazy. Let's just go live and be crazy on camera because we're so nervous. But you don't seem nervous. And now you face more charges in another state. I mean, emotionally, what's your secret sauce?
Maybe it's the way I'm wired, but honestly, I got something from my dad when I was a kid, and he told me, he said, Paul, I'll share this with you, how I feel about life, and it might not be the same for you, but I feel like whatever I'm going through, no matter how hard it is or how bad it is, I just generally have this internal belief that things are going to be okay, one way or the other. And that resonated with me, and I've kind of adopted that over the years. But the only reason I can really exercise that now under these circumstances is completely thanks to you all, to Jane, your audience, your platform, these panelists, all these people that are here in support. I could not and would not do any of this alone. Wayne and I facing the judge or jury without this team and all these people. We got a New York Times article today. Matt Johnson did that. All these people in town that come from St. George, and they come up and they want to find out what's going on about the trial. They walk away feeling in support of us, thanks to Rocky Chow. Like, we have people that are good at so many different things. And if I didn't have a support system like I do, and it helps to have the love and support of my mother as well. I told her, hey, Mom, I could get out of this with a misdemeanor, but I want to stay in it. And she says, Paul, I love you. I believe in you. Do what you want to do. And I support you 100%. She was, I'm one of those people, I don't focus too much on the people that are vegan or not, frankly. My attorney, Mary Corporon, is not a vegan, but she's doing great work for animals right now, in my opinion. But I do care that my mom went vegan. I'll just tell you really quickly how she did that. And I got my first charges in Utah, and it was relating to turkeys out here in Utah, and it was felony charges. And she told me, she said, well, I'm not going to have you sitting in a cage while I have a turkey on a table who you took out of a cage. And that's why I think, honestly, it's not about risking charges, but with your friends, your family, understand they're coming from where they're coming from. We don't need to really judge them too much, but we should let our inner self show and be proud of who we are and be proud of our beliefs, and not try to hide that too much. That's like, not to say just shame people or cut them off because they act a different way, because none of us are perfect, but feel comfortable saying how you really feel about animals, whether it's to somebody on the street or in front of a judge.
Wow, that's so beautiful, and that your mother's proud of you. Karen LaCava, I know that you have to go. Do you have a final question before you hop off?
I just think you guys have done an amazing job, and I'm wishing that the jury does the best and find well not guilty. Luck to you, and I'll be watching. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, thank you for joining us. Yes, Karen LaCava, who is an amazing vegan realtor, as well as a vegan chef and a caterer, and who helps in many ways, an activist. Mick, you've been quiet. What are your questions for Paul Picklesheimer while we wait on pins and needles for the verdict? The courthouse is right behind him. A verdict could come in any second, or it could be hours. The jury has gone and asked one question. We're not allowed to know what that question is. And we're just on verdict watch. Mick.
So I want to ask two quick questions. They both relate to the very end of the trial. So first one would be like when something happened with a juror, and there's a lot of miscommunication. We have no idea what transpired. But did the judge disqualify a juror or put him on an alternate? So that's the number one question, if you understand what happened. And then the other thing is, when the slew of questions came in from the jury at the very end, we were getting information that a lot of them had to do with animal welfare related questions. I think that was coming from inside the court. Did you guys actually hear the questions? And also, did you hear the judge explain to the jury why their questions would not be addressed?
Wow.
Yeah, great questions. So all the jurors, once we had the jury seated, they all behaved exceptionally, and none of them ever risked anything. But maybe you're thinking of somebody who was in our potential juror pool, who we fought for the previous day, and that we really wanted this person in the jury pool. The prosecution really didn't want him in the jury pool, but the judge ruled in our favor. Wayne did. And also with the help of Mary, what's known as juror rehabilitation. That's where coming in, a juror seems prejudiced for one side or another, and the side that wants them does the work to try to help them really clarify their position to the point that the judge sees, okay, they're willing to make a fair decision. So it was, to use the judge's words, a masterful job at that. The next morning when we came in, the judge informed us, hey, everybody, juror number, I forget the number they were. He said, I slept on it. And I think that what they said in their questionnaire was just too problematic. And then this is the troubling part. He said, and I just don't have it in me to have the prosecution burn one of their 5 precious strikes. And the first part, I can accept his argument, even though he ruled on it the previous day. I would like him to stick with that. But he certainly should not be factoring in the prosecution's precious strikes, because by law, we earned our 10. They had their 5. He essentially gave them a 6th by striking that potential juror for them. So in reality, we got 10 and they got 6, but I'm still happy with the jury we got. And questions about the questions they'd ask, the judge would do a decent job of explaining the questions, except some he would keep confidential. Counsel would share that with us, my attorney, Mary Corporon, and they were, I won't go into what they were right now. And, but in general, there was a wide range, and I could understand, well, maybe they really directly violated the welfare question, but it was clear to me that there are some people in there who sound like they were really on our side and really connecting with our arguments. And there were certainly some people who, might have been looking for ways to push back a little bit. And that doesn't surprise me now, seeing that the jury's been in there for so many hours.
I would think if I was a juror, the first thing I'd want is, where's that videotape that everybody keeps talking about that we're not allowed to see? Operation Death Star. Even the prosecution referred to it. Well, that video isn't from Operation Death Star, is it? So did you ever get a sense whether these jurors were allowed to even ask about, why can't we see this? And when can we see this? Because that would certainly telegraph that they know they're not getting the whole story and they're annoyed by it.
Yeah, I'm sure they were all wishing they could just see it. I'm sure they wish they could, just even research this case on their own. but I get it. The system doesn't work that way. And yeah, I think frankly, our side both did a pretty good job of answering that question before they had to ask it in a way, because they would talk about screenshots or clips. We would object to the screenshots and say the jury should be able to see the footage in its entirety. A clip or a screenshot or one photo doesn't tell the whole story. The jury's entitled to see the whole thing. So I think the jury's understood, okay, we are being deprived of the actual facts in the case. I can tell you this, if I was a juror and I'm judging a felony or a burglary and someone's freedom is in the balance, and you're telling me I can't watch a video of what happened, I'm upset, frankly. And I think that probably did upset some jurors. Obviously, going into it, the prosecution argued their words that it would horrify the jury. But still, I would say, you know what? Just take the chance. Show me the horrific thing, and I will still do my best to be objective and make the right decision. So, yeah, I think that's one of the first appeals that'll be on the list when time comes.
Wow. Okay. We've got Paul Picklesheimer here on Verdict Watch. He is outside the courthouse in Utah where he could learn his fate any minute now. The jury has been deliberating since 9 o'clock this morning, Mountain Time. So 8 a.m. Pacific Time. We're talking 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, almost 8 hours. Is that right? 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 7 hours. That's how I do my math, people. Sorry. But that's a long time. I think some of us thought, Marina Bolotnikova from the Intercept, you've been covering this from the beginning, that, maybe it would be 10 o'clock, certainly before lunch. I think a lot of people suspected. But this, to me, says epic battle, that like that movie, 12 Angry Men.
Yeah. I didn't really, I didn't know what to expect. It can be so unpredictable. When Wayne, sorry, I'm getting a lot of reflection. Wayne was convicted of 2 felonies last December in North Carolina. I think the jury took like maybe an hour. And I was so that was my only reference. And I think this case has gotten a lot more publicity. It has, as Paul said, a more obvious villain. And it clearly seems like the jury sympathizes more with the defendants. I wonder whether they're arguing about whether to, whether they're arguing about whether or not to convict Paul of anything, or if they're arguing about whether to acquit both of you.
Yeah, and just let's lay it out. There are you got 2 charges, one against each of you dropped, which yesterday cut the amount of time you could serve in half from approximately 11 years to just over 5 years, maybe 6 years. There's 2 charges that remain. Spell out the 2 charges. One's a felony, one's a misdemeanor. Tell us, Paul, what exactly are you facing?
Yeah, let me just pull out my phone really quick, and I'll just read through the elements. So this is what the jury is tasked with deciding. Sorry, 1 second.
No worries. We very much appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and I hope we're just taking your mind off things for a minute so that you're distracted. Like I said, you're very brave. We're all more nervous than you are, it seems. Go ahead.
Thanks again. And I might be out of frame here, but I'm just trying to look at my phone at the same time, which is fine. But so for count 2, which was previously the second felony burglary charge, it says Paul Darwin Picklesheimer is charged with count 2 with committing a burglary of a building on or about March 7th, 2017. You cannot convict him. I go by they, them, but with the court, we didn't try to do that. But of this, sorry, I got to zoom in a little bit. I'm 44 years old, y'all. Of this offense, based on the evidence, you must find beyond the reasonable doubt each of the following elements, not some of the elements, but each of them. 1, that Paul Darwin Picklesheimer, yes, that's me, in Beaver County, state of Utah, yes, I was in this Beaver County, state of Utah, entered or remained unlawfully. Well, you could argue that I trespassed. I think that would be not the most unreasonable thing to argue whatsoever. So far it's looking like a conviction in a building or a portion of a building So far, yes. And then the last is with intent to commit theft. So I had no intent to commit theft. Now let's just go to the charges for theft so we know what theft is. So for theft, Paul Darwin Picklesheimer, yes. In Beaver County, Utah, yes. Obtained or entered unauthorized control, or no, obtained or exercised unauthorized control. This would mean picking up a piglet, which I did not do. Over the property, once again, the piglet, with another purpose, with a purpose of depriving the owner, no purpose to deprive, and the value of the property is less than 500. So it says less than 500 there. Later in the jury instructions, it does say that it has to have a positive value. So I just didn't do these things. On my previous charge, the count 1 that was dropped, it had some 3 magic words in there, a few magic words, and it said Paul Darwin Picklesheimer as a party of. Now that is called party liability. So on the first felony burglary charge, there was a thing called party liability, which would mean that if I even assisted, then I should be found guilty. Now, I didn't actually assist in the quote-unquote crime whatsoever. I only filmed. I'm not assisting in the crime. The crime could have happened, the quote-unquote crime could have happened totally fine without me. But when they dropped that charge, then any inkling of party liability disappeared. That's why I do find it, I'll speak highly of Von Christensen in some ways, but I really thought it was kind of a low move when he told the jury that because I was an integral part of the team. No, Vaughn, I played a valuable role in the team, but I did, that's the team. It's not a matter of a crime if I'm part of the team or not. It doesn't matter if I had a shirt on. There's no law against a shirt. It's just a matter of, did I exercise unauthorized control over the property, which I never did. So those are my charges. And the thing is, I also think Wayne should be acquitted because especially like we've got the intent argument and you've got the value argument, and people might like one more than the other. But for me, there's just no way a reasonable person should expect that these 2 piglets were going to end up anywhere but the dumpster. And we heard no evidence that they plan to sell these pigs as dead piglets in a dumpster. I know, we all know that like certain chickens go to, the food places or whatever. And of course, we know these pigs all end up at Farmer John, and their blood ends up in Farmer John's drainage ditches, and they sell the blood to places that make fertilizer. But this instance, this dumpster was for the purpose of throwing away the trash. They have a permit. We couldn't get this in to trial, but Smith, that location, Circle 4 Farms, has a permit to dump. How many pounds? Does anyone know? It's something like, it's millions of pounds.
18 million.
So they're going to a landfill. I know in my heart of hearts, beyond any reasonable doubt, that these 2 piglets were going to that landfill. So I think it's a clear acquittal for Wayne Hsiung by the letter of the law. I think it's an obvious acquittal to me as well. Now, as much as I appreciate the jury, obviously they're not all in agreements on that. So we're gonna have to see how it plays out. Thanks for bearing with me on the reading.
Oh, sure. Thank you for.
Paul, sorry,
Go ahead, Marina.
Am I interrupting someone? Paul, when you were, yesterday when everyone was meeting off the record to finalize the jury instructions, it sounded like there were. There was a lot of discussion about how to instruct them to think about the value of property. To me, when the judge was reading out the final instructions, it sounded like they were told that the property needed to have some value for them to convict. Is that right, or can you talk more about that?
Yeah, that's correct. I didn't care for the way that the jury instructions were worded when it comes to value. Because obviously in the charging document, it says less than 500. So that can mean 0. And that's not okay. So we need a positive value because we think, yeah, if they had value, it was negative value. They were a liability. They could sell these pigs according to them, the ones that are actually weaned, not these 2 specific pigs, for $40. And that's not even what you could sell them for in the open market. That's just like, someone else explained, just like what you would get as a refund if you had to do VSD or something. So yeah, it's like it would cost more it did in real life cost considerably much more to rehabilitate these piglets than even the prosecution argued they were worth. So that's a negative value. So we didn't want anything less than 500. we wanted to be very clear that they had to be of value, and value defined as, value on the fair open market. And no one's going to buy these pigs unless maybe, they're priceless to me. We don't buy animals in our work, but they're priceless to me. But that no value by the way the law defines it.
Yeah, I have a personal question to ask you. Do you prepare? How do you prepare for a day like this? It's absolutely unbelievable that you're as cool as you are, given that you could learn in a minute or 5 hours whether you're going to prison for 5 or 6 years, and you could be cuffed and taken away. How do you prepare? I mean, do you take care of your home? Do you get out of your lease? Do you sell your car? Like, how do you prepare for something like this?
Great question. Yeah, all that stuff you said. I'm month to month on my lease, so I paid my rent for October and told my lovely landlord, hey, I hope to see you and hope to pay rent in September too, but in November too, but that remains to be seen. And I have plans that if I am convicted, I've got a bill of sale ready to go. I can just sell my car to a friend, or I also have the opportunity to gift it. I've got all my passwords and stuff like that passed on to people who I trust with that, and I've talked to my mom, and we've got ways to communicate with each other, because when you're talking to somebody in jail, everyone's listening. Sometimes you want to have some privacy, so you want to be able to help people maybe understand if you're under duress or not at the moment that you're talking. And other than that, I've just done as much research as I could, on the prison system itself. So I go in with a good understanding of, what things might be like, and, what kind of behaviors might be beneficial to me and my safety. And other than that, the last 2 weeks has just been prep. So every day we go to court. I'm glad we have access to our cell phones and laptops right there at the table. So we're researching everything they say, looking for anything to use against them or rebut anything that they said about us. And then we come home and, do more research. And I'm a fraction, a small fraction of what Wayne's doing in terms of that thing. Because I have counsel, but Wayne is his own counsel. So this guy has been going nonstop for a couple of weeks now in a row. So we're all looking forward to, hopefully having a day off soon, and hopefully it's on the outside.
Dear God. I mean, literally, you are just waiting. We're all waiting. In fact, we were all on verdict watch. We were going to go live when the verdict came in. After they asked the question, we were all texting each other. Well, what do you think is going to happen? I finally said, let's just go live, because we're all just sitting around biting our nails. Nathan, is there any way to predict what's happening in the jury room? I mean, I think it has to be, this is my personal opinion, an epic battle right now. Look, you have two sides presented. You have one side saying these pigs are equivalent to a can of soup. And if you can't steal a can of soup, you shouldn't be able to steal these. I think that was an abominable argument that would have made me sick to my stomach if I was a juror. But then there are other people who are like, well, if you break the law, you do the crime, do the time. We've even had some of those people here commenting words to that effect. I mean, this is almost like a generational, almost like a philosophical outlook. Are these animals just property? That's why this is a historic trial. Nathan, weigh in on that in terms of the historical value of this trial.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the New York Times just covered it today, and we're all so glad to see that happen. We've spent the last couple of days, asking how is the world going to see this, and we're seeing that happen now. It's monumental. There's a quote in the article saying that this is the biggest animal rights case possibly in history. So it's monumental. But as to your first question, Jane, as to what is the jury doing right now? We attorneys would love to, to be a fly on the wall and know what's happening. But I will say this: it's a case that only has 2 charges, and for them to be still deliberating after all these hours is very, very meaningful. There is a lot to unpack in each charge. While there are things, and Paul just said, there are things that are just not in dispute, but there are key elements that are very much in dispute. You have, more than anything, I think, is the issue of intent, the issue of intent to commit a crime inside of that farrowing barn. And, there are, even from a common sense standpoint, and I'm hoping the jury is thinking this, is you had not just, Wayne and Paul, but you had other activists inside there. We know that there were hundreds, thousands of pigs in there, piglets in there. You had 10 hands and they left with 2 piglets. I mean, that's common sense. They weren't going in there to steal. The prosecution made a big thing about the T-shirts that everybody was wearing, and that, it's the mantra to, for all animals to be free. But they didn't leave the cages open. They didn't leave the doors open. They didn't let them run free. That really flies in the face of an intent to commit a crime therein. It shows that they're being truthful, that they saw 2 piglets that day that were in dire need, and that's why they rescued. They did not go in there for the purpose of stealing. They went in there to do an investigation, to record, to document, and then they came upon what they saw and they reacted. And unfortunately, the judge handcuffed their defense to the extent that they couldn't use necessity or right of claim. But there's still reasonable doubt, I think, easily, as to what their intent was in going in. And I think I'm hoping that that's what the jury is talking about. There's two people charged, so they have to consider it in terms of Paul. They have to consider it in terms of Wayne. There is real issue as to the valuation. I thought Dr. Rosenberg was a fantastic witness for the defense.
Let me jump in very quickly and explain who Dr. Rosenberg is. She was a witness for the defense. She is a veterinarian whose daughter, Zoe, happens to be a DXC member, a very active member. And Paul, they tried to make a big deal out of that, didn't they? That your defense witness, Dr. Kirsten Rosenberg, has a daughter who's an activist. And yet the judge seemed smitten almost with this witness, Dr. Rosenberg. She is a charming person. I've met her. But give us that sense of this veterinarian who testified for the defense.
Yeah. I mean, I see what the defense is obviously trying to do, take away credibility by pointing out bias. And sure, you can argue that, of course, the brilliant Kirsten Rosenberg has interest in this case, as she testified to. But I can tell you this about Kirsten and Zoe. I've never known either one of them to tell a lie or misrepresent anything in their lives. I wish we could do character witnesses because, I mean, I think we all try our best to be open and honest at times. And maybe sometimes we're not our best at it. And it's always like maybe something to think about and whatever. But Kirsten and Zoe are 2 people who don't have a governor on what they say whatsoever. The way Zoe speaks out and refuses to shut up when she sees injustice. I knew Zoe since she was a little girl. And the first time I was at Happy Hen and we went out to dinner or something at San Luis Obispo, Zoe would walk in every one of the restaurants that were serving animals and just yell like one line of a disruption and just move on to the next one. And that just struck me. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's amazing. Like this person, can't not speak her heart. And Kirsten's the same way. So if you want to say that Kirsten's, got some, interest in this, of course, she's a great person who cares about justice and justice for everybody, regardless of species. Now I'll say what prejudices or biases. The other witness is money. So Kirsten may have some interest in this because in her heart of hearts, she cares deeply about justice for everybody. If there's a bias on the other side, it's because he needs his job to afford his lifestyle. It's not about values. He got a raise from $90,000 to $170,000. That probably came with some mortgages or who knows what else. And he's employed very gainfully by the state of Utah. He's on their payroll. You know, someone pointed out that Sherston accepted a $10,000 donation to Happy Hen in exchange for all of her time prepping as an extra witness, which she balanced with doing so many things that are sanctuary. So I thought that was a low blow. I've come to understand that that's what prosecutors will do, whatever they have to do to try to make their case. And I've actually got to hop off here. But if anybody had one more question, I'd be happy to answer it.
All right. Does our panel have another question? I think, Simone, you've got to have a question. I know you. You never stop asking questions.
I would just say at the end of the day, I watch a lot of trials. Are you going to be able to talk directly to that jury and find out one way or the other how they came to their decisions? I would think that would be a very important thing, since you have other trials coming up, to know kind of what worked and what didn't.
No, we are absolutely. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just think that's a really good question.
We are absolutely allowed. Like, it's an anonymous jury now. It won't be anonymous after the fact. Anybody is allowed to ask questions of the jurors, and they are absolutely allowed to answer or decline to answer. They just become regular people after they deliver their verdict. And I think this goes without saying. I would never want anybody to be harassed over any role they played in my conviction or anything like that. These are individuals who are part of a system, and doing that would hurt future cases so bad. But I'm excited for journalists like Maria to have access to these numbers, or documentarians to be able to reach out. And I definitely want to hear stories about what happened in that room. And I look forward to hopefully some of the jurors being willing to talk about it.
Well, we just want to say thank you, Paul Picklesheimer, for taking the time to answer our questions and talk to us. What a stand-up guy. Here you are facing potentially 5 or 6 years in prison, and you could be handcuffed later today. Certainly, I hope that you walk away a free man tonight, and you all go and celebrate with all the people that you have there supporting you. But just the idea that you were cool, calm, and collected, and just took this time to answer our questions. We are so grateful to you, and we wish you the best, and our hearts are with you. We just want you to know that.
Thank you so much. I feel it, and all those sentiments go right back to y'all and the audience. Your work is so important. Just thank you. Keep it up. And yeah, we can. So many ways this day could play out, but I'm excited to find out how that is. And yeah, thanks again. I'll pass it back to Carla now. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul. Wow. History in the making. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Hi, Carla, there you are. And Carla Cabral is our reporter on the ground. She is a DXD member, and she is just a woman who can go live for 8 hours straight without any problem. So we're so happy to have you. I wonder if you can take us back to Wayne Hsiung, who is, you might say, the lead defendant, somebody who is also facing 5.5 years in prison, who is one we could certainly say that they're gunning for, as it were. He's the leader of DXE, he was the co-founder of it, and he is a leader in this style of activism. So, Carla, bring us up to date. What's happening over there?
I mean, right now there are, let me see if I can turn this around. There are activists all over the place. We're all sort of camped out. You can see the courthouse behind me. We're all just camped out, waiting to hear when the jury is going to come back. Everybody is, in good spirits, but of course we're all very nervous. We care so deeply for Wayne and Paul, and we believe so much that what they did was the right thing. And so we're all here to support them. And it's just a waiting game now.
Wow. And, are you surprised, as somebody who has been there from the get-go, that this is taking so long? We're now entering, it started at 9 a.m. your time, and it's 4:30. So we're almost at 8 hours now. Carla, are you surprised?
Let me go lie down.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not really surprised. I think everybody is sort of happy that the jury is taking this long. It means they're really deliberating. They're really taking it seriously. As you guys are aware, they did get to ask a question that seemed to be favorable for our side. So I think it's a good thing that it's taking this long, and I think the seriousness of the outcome, I'm not surprised that they're taking their time, making sure that no matter what they do, they feel good about the decision that they make.
Well, you know, the irony is the judge was hell-bent on getting this done yesterday, and that seemed to be his biggest concern. In fact, he threatened to declare a mistrial if it wasn't wrapped up, and here he really doesn't have complete control over the jury and how long they take to deliberate. So now it's sort of like he was trying to speed up the trial. Well, the jury is slowing the trial down. If they don't reach a decision by the end of the day, tomorrow is Sunday. We know that it's expensive for local counties and municipalities, et cetera, to keep their buildings open on a weekend. We're going into a 3-day, this is the start of a 3-day holiday weekend. Monday is Columbus Indigenous Peoples Day. So, do you have any indication of would they come back on a Sunday or would they come back on a Tuesday? Carla?
Yeah, sorry, my mic didn't go up. So I would think that they'll probably go on Tuesday, would be my guess. Although, I don't know, this jury has surprised us. So they might say, no, we want to stick with this. I think it's going to depend on whether they feel like they're close to coming to a decision. I think that if they aren't really close and feel that they need a lot more time, that it'll be Tuesday. I think it'll either be today or Tuesday.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that I personally feel like there's a very good chance that they're going to walk into that jury room and they're going to walk into the courtroom and say, Your Honor, we're unable to reach a decision. Because it's two mindsets. Okay, one mindset is, oh my God, these people are heroes. They went in there and they rescued these animals. What a terrible place. Even if we didn't see the video, we get the idea. It's a hellhole. And then the other mentality is exhibited by what the prosecutor said in his closing statement, which I thought was appalling. Listen to this.
Analyze for just a moment the reasoning being demonstrated here tonight. I think it's clear that the pigs were stolen. They were taken, and they were not returned. In fact, Mr. Hsiung stated he didn't want to return. That's that. Imagine the use of the word rescue in some other context. Suppose you were in the grocery store, and you saw a can with dents in it, and you thought to yourself, oh my goodness, that can has a
Guys, let me stop. Let me break in. Things are happening, guys. Let me break it. It looks like people are really starting to move around. I think we might have a verdict. Is that the case?
Verdict is in.
Yes. A verdict is in.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Wayne, is Wayne right there? He's going in right now.
Let me see if I can
just grab him. Follow him as he goes into court if you can. Yes. There they are, the two of them. The heroes of this movement who could go to prison for 5.5 years each, and they are smiling. And they are smiling. Oh my gosh!
I'll just say to all you that again, winning or losing doesn't depend on what happens in the courtroom. It depends on what happens out here. So, whether Paul and I walk back out of this courtroom or not, just keep speaking your truth, and we're gonna win. It's true. Okay. So thanks to all of you for being here. We'll see what happens, and I think I speak for both of us in saying we're just really grateful for your presence. It's been amazing last week. It really has, and we've made progress regardless of what happens in the next 2 minutes. All right, let's do it. Let's do it. I'll give you this.
Wow. You are seeing an historic moment as Wayne Hsiung and Paul Picklesheimer walk into court to face the music, as it were. Wow. And they are so cool, calm, and collected.
I should put my suit on.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Wow. What's the mood there? Go ahead, Carla.
Yeah, just saying they're getting themselves together. Wayne wants to put his suit on, make sure that he's ready to go, and then they're going to go in.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah. Wow.
I'll keep you guys appraised.
Well, yeah, just if you could stay live for a minute or two and just walk up to the courthouse. Are you going to go inside?
No, I'm not gonna go inside because I wanted to stay live with you guys.
Wow,
but there are gonna be people are gonna be paying. You know, people are gonna be on the WebEx. So you will know immediately when I know exactly. Hopefully, I don't know. Are you guys allowed to listen to the reading of the verdict?
I don't know. I don't think so because we're not. This is a question for Marina.
I think we will be. We'll see. There is a WebEx event for today. It's been and it has been blank all day, but the reading of the verdict should be public, I think. So I think they should come on it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, this is such a crazy judge. I'm sorry. I take that back. I withdraw that line of questioning.
Jane, we do have a link for today, and I'm logged on, just so you know, on a different system.
Oh, great. So you're going to be able to bring us the very latest of what happens. Carla, just tell us play by play what's going on here, hopefully, and thank you for staying with us. A sacrifice, because I know you'd rather be inside court, and I applaud you for being so kind to us to stay live so that you can bring us the answer the second it happens. There they are. Wayne's going in. He's hugging people. And wow, there he is going into court. And we don't know if he's going to come out as a free man or he's going to be in handcuffs. That's the thing. He could end up in handcuffs and never see freedom for 5 years after this. So you're seeing something that is truly history in the making. A man who could go to prison for 5.5 years. As that door closes, it is possible that he may not come out. And the same for Paul Picklesheimer. Paul, you're looking at in the gray jacket there who's going
Where's
in.
the mic and
Do not
microphone?
know.
Can I take my glasses?
Let's just listen in because this is a very historic moment. Wow. Me.
Who am I missing? I have me, Crystal, Matt, Michelle, Kara, and now Avery and Michael.
Hi, Crystal.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, tell us what you're feeling right now as we hear that the verdict is in.
I've had all my emotions already today. I'm, whatever, I am so hoping for that positive, like not guilty all counts, as a long shot as that is. This doesn't spell the end for animal rights. This doesn't set any sort of precedent that's going to set animal rights back by any means. This is only talking about a specific tactic in a specific time in history.
Louis, they're here.
If they are guilty on any count, it's just going to mean, you know what, we have to try again and do it a different way. But if they're not guilty, that's huge.
And what is the emotional mood here? Because
I got a Lucky Rock too.
Honestly, I think that the two defendants are the calmest people involved. You're emotional, I'm emotional, but they're like another day at the office, cool as cucumbers. Wow, where do they get that?
I think they've lived this day in their minds for a long time, or lived this day in their minds for a long time. The rest of us, this hasn't been the central focus of our life the way it has for them. But I'm sure they're all feeling new emotions as it's become so imminent.
Are family members of Wayne and Paul there, or is it just the supporters from DXC?
Just our little family here, non-biological.
Got it. Yeah. Well, because Wayne has been charged in many other states, and they're facing apparently some charges. At least Paul is. I don't know about Wayne in Wisconsin. Wow, what is everybody's emotional reaction? Starting with Mick, I know you choked up when you heard his final closing statement. Thank you, Crystal Heath. That's a veterinarian, Dr. Crystal Heath, who has our honor. But before you answer that, just Carla, is everybody in now? Is this is it? The prosecution, did you see them going in? Or they're probably in, they probably were there already.
Yeah, I think they're already in there. We did not see them go in, so I think that they're already in there.
Wow. You're doing an amazing job for us live. We're going to have to give you an award, Carla, because you're doing such an amazing job. Mick, what are your emotions? I know you had choked up a little bit when you were listening to his closing statement.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see me. I think I'm frozen up somehow.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, great. You know, I did get choked up because his the last few sentences of Wayne's closing were just incredible. But right now I'm feeling more anxious than emotional, right? That was a very emotional thing last night. Right now it's just anxious. It just it feels so unfair that here we have people who are being charged with a crime for theft, for example, right? To me, theft is something where someone benefits personally from it. Not only are these folks not benefiting from it, they're actually about to give everything up for it.
Yeah. In fact, as I mentioned, they literally could end up not walking outside for 5 years. They could literally have the cuffs put on them at the end of the verdict if they are found guilty, particularly of the felonies. Now, there's two. There's a felony count of burglary, which is 5 years, and then there's a misdemeanor count of theft, which is 1 year in prison. And we know that they've been deliberating approximately 8 hours. So what are your emotions, Maryam? I know you're close to some of these folks.
Yeah, I've also been very anxious, nervous, upset, angry, gone through the whole host of emotions and feelings. I also cried when Wayne gave his opening statements as well as closing statements. And I keep thinking, how can anybody hear him and see his work and hear the testimonials about his character and who he is and where he's been in his life and not believe that he did this out of the goodness of his heart and for good reasons. And that was to save the animals and to expose the cruelties behind closed doors. Everyone needs to see what's going on inside of these factory farms. And it takes a lot of courage to do this. It's not easy. It takes courage. It takes selflessness for somebody to go this far to expose the cruelties and to save lives of humans or non-humans. And in this case, Smithfield has not only harmed non-humans, but also humans, but we won't go there. So
I want to play the prosecution statement, which we almost got through, but there's a point, it's a minute, where he compares pigs to a dented can.
Things that will happen in this world.
Sorry.
Analyze for just a moment the reasoning being demonstrated here tonight. I think it's clear that the pigs were stolen, they were taken, and they were not returned. In fact, Mr. Hsiung stated he didn't want to return them. That's that. Imagine the use of the word rescue in some other context. Suppose you were in the grocery store and you saw a can with dents in it. And you thought to yourself, oh my goodness, that can has a dent. It has the potential of going bad. I better rescue that can, put it in my purse, take it out of the store. Or imagine you're at DQ, you see dripping ice cream cone up there that the clerk just put on the counter. Oh dear, that cone is dripping off the side. I better take it so that it doesn't make a mess on the floor. Or so
Simone Reyes, what was your reaction to that? I found it deeply offensive.
I mean, you can only hope and pray that the jury was just as put off. You know, you don't need to be an animal rights activist to say, how is a living being that was suffering, how is that in any way a good example to say that a can or an ice cream cone is the same? I'm hoping that was, something that was like a light bulb moment for them where they were like, wow, okay, if that's the best the prosecution and the state has, maybe we need to, go with Wayne and Paul. I can only pray.
Now, Marina Bolotnikova, you've covered this from the very beginning. You probably know more about this case than anyone except for the prosecution, the defense, and the defendants. What's your prediction? Let's do it. We don't know. They're going in there. There's gonna be the verdict has been reached. We're gonna hear it any second now. So you're seeing history as it happens. You just saw live video of the defendants, Wayne Hsiung and Paul Picklesheimer, walk into the courthouse. Again, they may never walk out as free men. They could be handcuffed and taken to prison right from where they are if they are convicted of the felony count of burglary. That gives you 5 years. And you heard Paul say that with a felony, they often do not let you walk out the door, or they could be convicted of a misdemeanor count with just 1 year in prison for theft. What's your prediction?
Well, it's so unpredictable. I've been having, I mean, my feelings about it have been all over the place. I've been trying to have low expectations. I don't know if I had to, if I had to guess something, I would guess that maybe they acquit Paul and convict Wayne of one or both of the charges.
I think that's sort of my guess. Given that there's obviously there was some conflict. Like they didn't just walk in and say, oh, they're either all guilty of everything or they're all innocent. There was 8 hours approximately of deliberation. So they were in conflict. And sometimes they tried to, either you convince the other side that you're right or you come up with a compromise. So I'm going to predict, and again, I could be completely wrong. And please understand, I want them to be found not guilty and acquitted on all counts. Please understand that. But just because I'm asking everybody to take a guess, I'm thinking they may acquit them on the felony counts and may just give one misdemeanor count of theft to Wayne. That would be a guess if they were coming up with a compromise. What is your guess?
They don't know, Jane. They don't know whether they're misdemeanors or felonies or the severity of the charges. It's like, they've not been allowed to know the magnitude of the charges.
Wait, I thought they weren't allowed to know how much time that each charge would hold in terms of a prison term. But you're saying to me they don't even know whether they're felonies or misdemeanors?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they don't.
Wow, that's heavy. Well, I take it all back. I have no predictions. Nathan, what is your best guess?
Boy, it's tough. It's really, really tough. I think what you just concluded is definitely a reasonable conclusion to come to. That if they subscribe to the notion that the piglets had some value to Smithfield, some fair market value, then I could see them convicting Wayne of the larceny charge. But you know what? I'm going to go all in. And I think we're going to hear 4 acquittals today. We're going to hear 4 not guilties today. I find it hard to believe that 12 people, I mean, nowadays 12 people don't agree on anything. I just find it hard to believe in 8 hours, 12 people are going to come to an agreement on a case of this seriousness, this magnitude. And I think because the burden is reasonable doubt, I think they can hang their hat on reasonable doubt and acquit on all charges.
All right, from your mouth to God's ear, as they say. Let's go to Simone Reyes. What is your best guess?
It sounds like the WebEx is starting.
Okay.
The judge has started speaking.
Okay. Do you want to jump off and just you?
Yeah.
Off.
I'll go off to pay attention to this.
Yes,
for a bit.
of course. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, Marina Bolotnikova of the Intercept, which is one of the great independent journalistic organizations covering this when so many others are not. Thank you, Marina, very much. So, okay, Carla, what's your best guess?
I have to agree with Nathan. I think that given everything that we've heard, I'm putting my bet on acquittal as well.
Yes, and you know, Carol Zarbano has a great point. If Casey Anthony can be acquitted, then they should definitely be, because so many times you see acquittals where everybody's pulling their hair out and running around and saying, "What? You did what? You acquitted?" We can all think of the famous cases where it was so obvious, right? And we don't need to mention them because they were acquitted. So I'm going to change my guess and say not guilty on all counts, okay? Because I didn't understand until just now. I thought they knew the length of time. And if they didn't even know the length of time, I don't think they want to risk it with people who clearly are doing this because their heart's in the right place. That's the whole point. It's a human decision. These people are obviously what moron would break into a giant factory farm to steal 2 piglets for any other reason than there's a good reason, right? I mean,
the jury is coming in right now.
Wow. So we're going to know any second now. This is happening live. You saw Wayne and Paul go in. Thanks to Carla's great reporting there on the ground. You're going to be snapped up by NBC or ABC News real quick, Carla. If they establish animal rights divisions, which they should, because you're doing a great job down there. What's it like for the folks who are behind you, who can't get into? Are they listening, right? They're quietly listening. Is that what they're doing?
Absolutely. I mean, you can see behind me. You know, if it weren't for a large generator going, you could hear a pin drop right now. Everybody is just intensely waiting, listening to the WebEx. And it's intense right here. You can feel it.
Yeah, I can imagine. So let me ask you, Simone, your emotions right now as just a human being, somebody you yourself spend maybe 12, 14 hours a day trying to rescue 1 pig here. That's your specialty. 1 cow here or 2 cows. They rescue 2 piglets symbolically to illustrate the millions and billions even of pigs who are suffering right now. What's your emotional feeling about how historic this particular moment is that we're all sharing together?
Well, in so many ways, you know, when one member of our community faces something like this for doing something that all of us want to be able to do, it feels like it's happening almost to you, even though, of course, there's no real, you know, we're not there. We're not losing our freedom potentially for many years, but it is just a huge hit if something bad happens to a member of our community, such as this, or when something amazing happens. So I think that they are representing the entire animal rights community right now.
They are reading the verdict right now, right this second. So I'm going to get a pen out because I don't want to get it wrong. There's 2 counts, 1 felony count for burglary, 5 years in prison. Hold on. We're going to go right to Carla. Whoa. Whoa. What happened?
We the jury above case finding the defendant Paul down to the time as follows. Count 2, legally of the felony that guilty.
Not guilty.
All right.
Which count is this?
All counts?
Whoa.
All counts.
All counts? Not
All
guilty
counts.
on all counts?
Not guilty.
Yes.
On all counts?
On all counts.
Not guilty? Is this true? Not guilty on all counts?
Sorry, guys. I think they've only ruled on Paul, but Paul was found not guilty.
No, Wayne's was read first.
Wayne went first.
Wayne went first. It's all not guilty.
Not guilty on all counts. I want to make sure we got this right. I don't want to have to
That's
do
what
a
I heard.
correction.
I heard 2 not guilties for Wayne, followed by 2 not guilties for Paul.
Well, Carla, can you just confirm that with somebody there just before we start popping open the
Was that
Martinelli's?
both? Everybody not guilty on all counts?
What's that?
Hold on. We don't have every count. Hold on. We do not have all counts.
Okay, I'm muting it for her just because I don't want to be found in contempt of court I don't know whether we're legally allowed to hear that, but it's on a loudspeaker in a park. So, you know, take me to court on that one. But we want to hear, this is amazing.
Jane, right now he's polling the jurors one at a
Okay,
time.
it's not
Acquitted
guilty
on
on
all
all
charges.
Yeah.
Not guilty on all counts.
And
oh my
right
gosh,
now he's-
Carla, take it away. Take it away, Carla. Take it away.
Yeah, I mean, everybody is just ecstatic over here. We're very excited. I heard the judge telling people to calm down, so I imagine that the people that are inside the courtroom also could not contain themselves, and everybody is just absolutely besides themselves with joy over this verdict.
Oh my God. This is history. This is absolutely history in the making. We saw it here today. Oh my gosh. Not guilty on all counts. I've got to say it again. Not guilty on all counts. This is a moment. This is a moment in history. The table has turned. The tipping point. Mick, tell us what you're feeling right this second.
I want to cry from excitement. Oh my God, the emotions! This is a victory. This is a big victory.
What's the emotion there, Carla? Can you show us what's happening with the folks there?
Everybody started. What does everybody think about the verdict? Let them know what you think about the verdict.
Wow. Wow, this is extraordinary. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Yeah, show us, talk to us a little bit more about the mood right there. Thank you, Carla.
Of course, I mean, everybody is just absolutely thrilled. You know, not guilty on all counts. It is historic, and everybody just cannot even believe how wonderful this is. What does this mean for the movement moving forward? You know, what is the agriculture industry going to do? We're going to have to see how this plays out immediately and then in the near future for sure.
Wow, unbelievable. Can you ask some of the folks who are out there how they feel, just like you brought in Paul Picklesimer, one of the defendants, and Wayne Hsiung, one of the defendants? I'd just like to hear from some of the rank and file members of the organization who are there, just who've come from all over the country to be there.
Yeah, hold on just a second. What do you think, Sanjeev? What do you think about what just happened? What are your immediate thoughts?
I think the jury made the right decision. You know, they looked into the hearts, they looked into the conscience, they made the right decision.
Thank you. Let's see if anybody else. What do you guys think about the decision?
Incredible. I don't even know what to say.
Emotional. Everybody's emotional about this. There are people crying. You know, people hugging Tiffany. What do you think about this historic decision?
Oh, I love knowing that it made such a difference to the jurors, that the jurors themselves could see what was really at stake. They didn't, and actually like that in this, at this point, I like knowing that the jurors didn't need to know that they were sentencing them to possibly 6 to 11 years in prison, you know, for these. It's so great that they had no idea how long it would be. They went by their conscience of what the facts were about. And you could tell that the jurors really cared about the conditions that Smithfield keeps their pigs in. Anyway, I don't know. I'm not very articulate right now. I'm so moved. I'm so grateful.
You are very articulate.
And Paul and everybody from Direct Action Everywhere for bringing us all together, and just the joy and this giant step for animal rights.
Fantastic.
I do feel it's a giant step for animal rights, Carla. I think it sends a message to the animal agriculture industry. The times, they are a-changing, and people's attitudes are a-changing, and you can't get away with this anymore. Yes. Answer. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Can you yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't know you were still.
Yeah.
Sorry. Show you I think there are some police around. I think they weren't sure what we might do depending on what the verdict was. I saw several police officers in different areas, but we are a nonviolent organization, and we could not be more pleased. Again, everybody right now is starting to move. They're all going to go across the street. So maybe we'll, I don't know if Wayne and Paul are going to come out soon. So we can stay if you guys want to talk for a little bit. I'm going to head back over there and see if they come out.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to say Carla Cabral is doing an extraordinary job. As I said, she should be snatched up by CNN or ABC News immediately, because she has stayed live and knows how to just stretch when you're in between these times where you're waiting for something to happen. But the big news, you saw it here. You saw Wayne and Paul talking before the verdict was read, cool as cucumbers, when their freedom was at stake. And then you saw them go in, and then you heard right here on Unchained TV that they were found not guilty on all counts. And again, these men faced 6 years in prison. They faced 1 felony count of burglary for 5 years, 1 misdemeanor count of theft for 1 year each in prison. And the jury in Utah, okay, this is a relatively conservative state, if not a very conservative state, their hearts, okay, said what's happening in those factory farms is morally wrong. We are not going to punish these people for trying to show us and rescuing 2 little pigs who were clearly dying. Maryam, tell us what was going through your heart right now. You are a DXC member.
Yes, I couldn't be happier. I can't believe it. I mean, I can believe it, but I'm so grateful to the members of the jury who actually made the right decision with the limited information that they had, even though it was obvious to the rest of us because we have the bigger picture, but they didn't. But they made the right decision. And as you said, this is a huge leap forward for the animal rights movement. And I can't wait to see where this is going to take us. And I mean, I'm thrilled for Paul and Wayne, and I'm thrilled for Lily and Lizzie.
Let's go in. There they are, Paul Picklesheimer walking out of court right now. Celebration and hugs all around. There's Wayne. Oh my gosh, Wayne. Yes. Oh my gosh, Wayne is celebrating with everybody in a state of ecstasy and joy. There's Paul Picklesheimer, the other defendant. Three men walking out today. All the charges against them thrown out. Okay, he's going to talk a little bit. Wayne, can you talk a little bit? Wayne, what's your reaction?
Hold on, I think he's going to say something soon.
In through the nose, out through the mouth.
Yeah.
I'm honestly just kind of flabbergasted. And just when the jurors walked in, they all had such serious-looking faces. I was just getting prepared for the conviction. But then when the verdict was announced, the first cue that I had that we had won is the judge said, "I don't want any noise." And I was like, "Noise?" And then, yeah, but I think the foreperson, Paul made a very good call from day one. Paul, you made such a good call from day one on the foreperson. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if we should go across the street. Just whatever you said.
I mean, the trial's over, so the order should be no. But
what's up, man? I thought I would miss you. I'm not gonna miss you now, dude. It was such a fucking
All right, we're talking about we might go across the street just so that we're not again loitering outside the front of the courthouse. We certainly don't all want to get arrested and be back in court, so we might be moving across the street if you guys want to discuss matters for a moment, and then I'm sure we're going to hear directly from Wayne and Paul.
Yeah,
they're having moments together.
Just follow them across the street. There's Kurt, the guy on the right, the tall guy who changed your venue by.
Yeah, that's Curtis. Curtis, do you want to say hi to everybody?
Hi. I don't know what else to say.
How do you feel? How do you feel right now?
Yeah, I'm thrilled. I'm overwhelmed with emotion. I mean, the odds were stacked so far against them, not in their favor. No video, no mention of animal cruelty, none of this. But luckily, the jurors were smart, and they you know, they realized that something was being hidden, and they made the right decision. So, yeah, I'm just feeling really great right now. So
Awesome. We actually are going to go right to Paul and Wayne. Let me get over here.
The answer is no. And at the end of the day, we're out, and I feel so happy about it. I'm so grateful for the attorneys and my counsel and the supporters, and a very intelligent jury who I trusted to debate until they could reach a conclusion, and I feel that they're to reach the right conclusion.
They were asking some good questions throughout the trial, honestly.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things we can talk about now is their questions weren't getting answered either. You know, it wasn't just our questions that are being objected to. Their questions were getting struck by the prosecution. They weren't allowed to ask about, for example, what animal welfare protections are there for animals? How often are there inspections of Circle 4 farms? How many veterinarians do care for the animals? You know, they were curious about the conditions of Circle 4, just as we were, you know, which just shows you people have the right to know and want to have the right to know how these things are being done in these factory farms. And
yeah, I guess it's a little shocking in some ways, though, isn't it?
it is, because the prosecution has used so much money and time to try and put us in prison. And even the judge, you know, a few months ago was laughing.
That's the attorney, Mary Corcoran, I believe. Mary Corcoran. She was the attorney for Paul Picklesheimer coming out. She did an amazing job. Even the judge said she was masterful. Freaking freedom, you are right. Freaking freedom. Wow.
I've already talked to Mary, but
You gotta call Liz right now.
I know.
Let's call her in.
yeah, call us.
I
can't believe Mary. I can't believe Liz is funny. Is that the kid who was asking video last night? They told you you're in the book. Thank you so much. Were you two free last night?
So I came down with her delay to Elmira because I assumed I was going to be convicted. So we're going to call on our other attorney.
The question I asked you last night, and feel free to talk to the I asked you last night, did the prosecution make mistakes? You said, it wasn't a mistake. Like, withhold evidence.
Carla, can you get a little closer so we can hear better?
Yeah, I'm trying.
We got to interview. Can someone try and Curtis, are you going to go back to the back entrance? Hey, Curtis, do you want to go back to the back entrance and see if you can?
Let's not talk.
What? You don't want to catch the jurors?
I do, but I don't want them lost.
Okay, Mr. Curtis.
Yeah.
Mr. Curtis. Curtis. What? Okay, one of the
So
yeah, try and catch the jurors.
they're actually trying to see if they can catch the jurors.
I think it was in their best interest of servants, in my mind, of the industry, to not show the footage.
So it's not in their best interest to show the footage.
Simply because of a couple things. For one, it makes the jury feel like they're being treated like babies. They're being spoon-fed some narrative and they can't see the real truth. The other reason is that the footage exonerates us. The more you see, any idea of value goes out the window. All you would know is that there's dumpsters full of baby piglets, just like Lil and Lizzie. There's pigs that are just dead on the floor. Like, the value argument, really, we tried to hinge it on the evidence that we collected, but we weren't allowed to present that evidence. So I think the jury felt betrayed by the prosecution, stopping the video coming out, and we felt hurt because we want to show the facts. We just want to be open and transparent about it. That's our whole operation.
And you don't have to. Before this, and certainly there's an irony to the correctional facility here being called purgatory. Were you thinking that tonight you'd be in purgatory as opposed to in a bed?
You know, I was thinking I was a 50-50 shot. I was thinking my co-defendant Wayne Hsiung had maybe a 20% chance of acquittal. And this is keeping in mind that I fully believe we're both completely innocent based on the facts at hand. But it's you just don't know what's in a jury's mind. This jury, we knew they were intelligent coming in, and we valued that. But they had good poker faces. They weren't letting us know through their looks and their reactions what they had in mind. Now, their questions, their amazing questions, did tip the hat a little bit. And I just want to say that the state of Utah having an avenue for jurors to help in the fact-finding process is crucial. And I think we might not have been able to get the crucial facts out if it weren't for the jurors asking those important questions.
And maybe I can get Wayne back in here really quick. Another quick question is that there's been a lot of concern expressed by you guys about the justice system.
Yeah, there has.
Has this changed your mind in any way?
I've always believed in the juries. The problem isn't the juries. The problem is the system around it. These jurors saw through all the tricks and shenanigans, efforts to gag us. And I think they saw the very true and basic story that Rick Pittman told at trial. That there is a difference between stealing an animal and rescuing someone who needs some help. They're just not the same thing. And that's all we did. There was no testimony in this trial, not even a word that suggested we did this to obtain any commercial gain or even to take anything commercially from the farm, right? And I think this panel of jurors just recognized that indisputable fact, and in many ways, established a right to rescue, not just for the two of us, but for anyone who sees us suffering.
There is a reason. Yeah. There is a reason that our founders gave us a jury system, which means you put people from the community in final judgment, not the king, not the king's counselors, but your neighbor. And there's something real pure about that system.
And every person's different. Some people, when they're in a traumatic situation, best way to put it, will be jovial, make jokes. This week, I know, really, it was almost an affront, frankly, for you, if anyone was laughing or anyone, and I'm not saying you're against laughter, but that anyone was, because you said it was such a serious situation. Is that always the thing, or are you a little relieved? Are you able to smile now a little bit? I don't want you to smile.
I'm still processing, honestly, because I just honestly, I didn't expect it. Like, I do believe in human goodness, and I believe humans are a kind species, but I also thought that the narrative was so jumbled and confused, and Mary thought I had made a disastrous mistake in calling one of our witnesses, because the narrative became even more.
Well, you had last night. You talked about that you felt yourself.
I thought I had not done a great job. So it was a combination of things. I thought I had done my best job as a lawyer. Definitely done better in the past. And I also thought that the narrative was just so confused because of all the objections. The jury just wasn't really getting the answer. And then the last thing the judge did of striking the last two witnesses, I just thought he's not going to get it. I was really worried that the last thing I heard was from Dean Taylor saying, "Oh, these piglets would have been fine. It would have been." But the thing is, even Dean Taylor, even their own experts, could not say these animals didn't need medical care. Like even the state's expert could not say that these animals did not need medical care. And I think the jurors probably, even though they're told not to listen to the rebuttal, even the state's rebuttal showed these animals needed help.
And lastly, guys, those who, and I'm going to be frank about this, and you know how social media goes. Those who will be on social media saying these guys should be behind bars, who might be disappointed right now at this verdict. Do you have any empathy? I mean, empathy is the wrong word. What would you say to those people?
Let's have a conversation.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. We like to talk to people. So if people have an issue with anything we did, even though the law found that it was a good thing to do, then we want to talk about it. Rick Pittman said it himself. He says that when you fight, you lose. I don't know if that's always the case, but I know it's always the best move is to talk to your adversaries, engage with them. And so we all come from so many different backgrounds. I'm from West Virginia. I grew up fishing and all that stuff. And, I see things a little differently now. And regardless of fishing or anything else, that's completely separate from what's going on when you're talking about a massive factory farm, the world's largest quote-unquote pork producer. So I'd say today's a good day for somebody in particular, and that's Lily and Lizzie, the two pigs who are living their best lives in the sunshine right now, who are priceless. And for them, they got the right to be rescued today. There are billions of animals who don't have that right yet, and we're going to keep working for them. And that's all I got to say.
I have a question.
One more.
Wayne, I want to ask a question, if I may, remotely. What about the animal agriculture industry?
Similar charge,
what message is this sent to the animal agriculture industry?
We can win here.
Yeah, let me see if I can get that question in. Yeah. The person who's having questions now is the St. George News. So as soon as he's done asking his questions, then I'll get in there and make sure that I ask.
Yeah, because his questions seem very biased against the defendants.
Very different than California or Madison, Wisconsin. So Dane County, Sonoma County, I don't know why these prosecutors bring cases. And I think, honestly, part of it is
there's this projection that happens when you are part of some criminal conduct. And I do think that when a prosecutor receives a criminal animal cruelty report, it does not respond to it. You're part of the problem, because that is your responsibility to protect the vulnerable. You know, and so if we tell you, hey, we have concrete evidence of animal cruelty, you should be responding to it. You should be fucking responding to it, because those animals need us. And there's no excuse for letting them die. And if you don't, a jury of our peers is going to let us do it. It's that simple.
Guys, I want to appreciate the time, and I want to tell you really quick.
I'll get a question in just a moment.
That I know about what happened yesterday, the memory card, all that stuff. I want you to know for the record, you didn't believe it.
Okay, thank you.
I want to make that clear.
I love
think it's going to be a first thing.
Okay, great. So thank you so much. That's music to my ears.
Big one.
Hey guys, so sorry, the guy on Jane Unchained, they want to know what this means for the animal agriculture what you think this means for the animal agriculture industry.
But now I retract my.
Wherever animals are suffering, and that is in factory farms across the nation, because it's intrinsic to factory farming that animals will suffer. The animal rights activists now have the right to rescue these animals, to give them aid. And, I think animal agriculture will try to clean up its act. Industries like the pork farming industries, companies like Smithfield will try to clean up their act. But I do think this is the first domino, legally, because if we have the right to rescue these two animals, we have the right to rescue the rest too. And that's where we're going. That is where we're going. And for those who think this is vigilantism or too revolutionary, I will just say this. Anyone who looks into the eyes of a baby pig like Lily, when we were looking at her inside that factory farm, and tried, even for a moment, even for half a millisecond, to understand what she was going through, would reach exactly the same conclusion that we've reached, which is that these industries are an abomination on the planet, on our food system, and on the human spirit. And it's an abomination that needs to be cleansed. And, there's survey evidence showing that 1 or 2 Americans, 1 factory farms and slaughterhouses shut down. It's starting. It's starting, because if it can happen in southern Utah, it can happen anywhere.
I have another question. The judge was controversial in this case. Many felt he was very biased. What was his reaction after the verdict was read? Did he say anything nice to you guys?
He didn't respond much to us. I mean, one of the people we only were allowed 10 people in the audience. And it was probably Matt, one of our audience members yelled out, and he just said, "Be quiet." That was about it. I have to say, I think even the judge was swayed by some of the evidence. He was very, very hostile to me throughout the entire trial. When I first asked if I could approach, he said no. He told me to sit down once, just for no particular reason. You're actually required under Utah rules to stand when you're addressing the court. But he didn't want to hear from what I was saying, so he just said, "Please sit down." He didn't even say please. He just said, "Sit down."
No, he just said sit down, yeah.
But by the end of the trial, I think he understood too why we were doing what we did. And again, that is with a very, very limited narrative. We only got in 5% of what we wanted to get in. We were getting objected to left and right. If you followed this trial, you know that every third sentence I was trying to make, either as a witness or as an attorney, was getting cut off by the other side. And there are all sorts of preposterous objections that don't even exist in the law that were being sustained against us. But we got enough of the narrative through to convince the jury that we weren't criminals. And I think that's pretty revolutionary.
And you have some upcoming cases. Do you think this is going to impact those upcoming cases where the prosecutors say it's not worth it? Times have changed. People are not on our side anymore. And I think this is a really historic moment.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is, Jane. I think in Dane County, Wisconsin, prosecutors have brought charges against myself, my buddy Paul, and Eva Hamer for rescuing from dogs from a vivisection lab. In Sonoma County, California, prosecutors charge us for organizing hundreds of people to do a nonviolent, peaceful sit-in with flowers in our hands and medical care in our kits, just for setting up a veterinary tent outside of a factory farm and giving care to the animals. Some of these animals had holes in their sides so gaping and so necrotic, you could see their rotting bone and flesh underneath the wound. And again, if a jury in southern Utah that is a heavily agricultural region of the country, that is 75-25 Trump, that is entirely white. We had an entirely white jury assessing the guilt or innocence of a Chinese person from Berkeley who's a vegan and a Buddhist. If we can win here, we will win everywhere. we will win everywhere. That means the right to rescue has de facto been established.
Do you think the industry, the animal agriculture industry, which of course knows that the clock is ticking, they're investing in alternative proteins, they're investing in vegan products, do you think they'll look at this and say the writing's on the wall? This is a nail in the coffin for animal agriculture and the meat and dairy industry.
Yeah, you know, when we won the fur ban in 2019, I had a similar experience, a little bit less personal and a little less anxiety ridden because my personal freedom wasn't at stake. But when we won the fur ban in California in 2019, I remember, Jane, you might have actually even been there. There were a bunch of representatives from the fur industry, and I saw like the looks on their faces and the way they were shaking their heads. And it's all a bunch of guys in like suits, you know, these aren't ordinary human beings. They're all lobbyists and representatives of this multi-billion-dollar industry. And I saw the same look on the faces of the prosecution in Smithfield when they're walking out today, and understanding that, you know, the writing is on the wall. Ordinary people don't want to see animals being hurt any longer, and they'll take a stand for it. They will take a stand for it, even against the power of the state.
And the last question, right now, the Supreme Court is getting ready to hear Prop 12, which is essentially a case, the California voters overwhelmingly voted to ban pig gestation crates. So do you think this is going to impact the Supreme Court? Because this is a conservative state, Utah. This isn't liberal California or New York. And in conservative Utah, they stood up for animal rights activists. The Supreme Court is going to consider whether or not to allow Prop 12, which would ban pig gestation crates, which was the reason you went into Smithfield. They still had those crates. Do you think it's going to impact the Supreme Court decision?
Yeah, if Justice Thomas and Alito aren't paying attention to this decision, they should, because as justices of the United States of America, not just the Republican Party, not just the conservative movement, but even if they were just representing the conservative movement, most of the jurors on this jury today were probably Trump supporters and probably Republicans. And they just let a guy who walked into a factory farm and took 2 piglets out without the consent of Smithfield walk out of the courtroom free. And so they have to ask themselves, do they want to be on the right side of history or the wrong side of history? And for hundreds of years, the legal system, the courtroom, and in particular the Supreme Court, have been the places where the most transformative changes and the most transformative catastrophes have unfolded in American history, whether it's Plessy versus Ferguson, right? That famous case is upholding segregation, to Brown versus Board of Education, when the Supreme Court struck it down. Whether it's Roe versus Wade and Dobbs, you know, that was ruled on just a few months ago. And I think even if you're a conservative justice, like an Alito, like a Thomas, like a Gorsuch, you have to be asking yourself, is this actually the right thing for our country? Are the interests at stake just interests that are sectarian, a small interest group of animal rights activists, or is this something everybody in America, including people in Utah, deeply and profoundly care about? And resoundingly, what happened today was a jury of people in Utah said, we care about animals. We care about animals.
Wow. Wayne, I have to say congratulations on a personal note. I'm so glad you're not going to prison. Wow, you are, I didn't think it was a good idea to represent yourself. I was wrong. You were right.
You can buy me a meal later, Jane. And I love you so much. I can't wait to come to Southern California, hang out with you and Mick and everyone else in LA.
All right, thank you. Congrats again. Go party. Go party. You deserve a good party. Wow, what an amazing moment. And thank you, Carla, for bringing that to us again. I know you've got like several texts from the major networks wanting to pick you up immediately.
I have activism to do. I'm sorry. I have activism that I have to start doing immediately.
Well, I know they're going to have a huge celebration over there. I feel like we've pretty much covered it. I want to get final thoughts from everybody on our panel. Wow. I do feel this is a major, major turning point for the animal rights movement. So let's start with Simone Reyes. Your final thoughts.
Just like Wayne said, this is a giant step of animals winning the right to rescue. That is huge. And I have to say, you know, I am one of the animal rights activists that came into this movement, not just because it was a social justice issue, because I care deeply about animals as individuals. And on a personal level, I'm so happy for Wayne's companion animals, especially, you know, hearing that his cat is old and sick, that she gets her dad back.
Aw, Maryam, and I know you have participated in DXC demonstrations. I was even there once when I tried to defend you against a very slanted local news reporter during a protest outside a slaughterhouse. What is your emotional reaction to this verdict?
I feel energized. I'm ready to go back to work, animal rights activism, and keep fighting like hell for we have a lot of work to do. This was a huge victory, but we still have a lot to do, and I hope that more and more people will be inspired to join this movement, to speak up for the animals and do it in their own ways. There are several ways to speak up for the animals. Pick what works for you. But to answer your question, I am excited. I am energized, and I am thrilled for Paul and Wayne, and I cannot wait to hug them in person.
Wow. I can tell you're emotional and excited. All right. Let's go to our attorney, prominent New York City attorney Nathan Semmel, who has stuck with us for 2 days. I think you have a 5 o'clock shadow. Tell us.
3 days now. You know, I echo what's been said so far. I'm thrilled for the movement. What this means so much to advocates, to activists, to the world. You know, today we saw coverage from the New York Times. I hope they follow up. I hope more outlets pick up on it. You know, thank goodness for you, Jane. But I want to add one other thing to this. I think we all really got a front row seat to how innocent people can be convicted in this system. You know, not just on, you know, obviously not just animal rights cases, but cases all over the country, and that there are innocent people locked up right now. And you know, we asked Wayne, you know, do you believe in the jury system? And the jury is as good as the evidence that's presented to it. And when the prosecution is able to frame a story that's anything but the truth, really, you know, when law enforcement lies, when prosecutors tell a half story, a quarter story, and manipulate the evidence in a way that doesn't remotely tell the story, good people, innocent people can get convicted, and they can serve prison time, and their lives, their families' lives get upended. I've seen it as a defense attorney. I've seen it as just as a human. And I think we all saw today how easily that can happen. Prosecutors are very, very powerful people. There are many who do a good job, and they do justice, and people are victimized by crime, and you know, they seek justice for those people, but they also can be a runaway train. And we almost saw that here. I mean, we were all on the edge of our seat, really scared, obviously, because we knew the magnitude of this case, but Wayne and Paul are wonderful people. And the idea of them going to jail for 30 days, a month, a year, 5 years was terrifying for us. So it's just it was close, and it shouldn't have been, because this wasn't a crime. And
yes.
That's
yes,
what I think.
Well said. Okay, Mick, I know you were very emotional during the closing statements. You wept. What is your emotional reaction and your big picture take on this?
Well, first, I think the jury stuck it to the prosecutor. Animals are not cans of soup, you idiot. Okay, so that's my first feeling. Okay, but I would say on a positive note, I think the last few words of Wayne's closing will probably be an inspirational quote for many people. I'm trying to remember what he said. We need to be good stewards to animals, and we have to learn to be kind, something of that nature. I think that was beyond powerful. And just in general, social justice really takes decades generations to change. People's attitudes take a long time to change, and laws, of course, take even longer sometimes to catch up. It's like chipping away a million little pieces off of a mountain, right? And today was a glacier that came down.
I think that's absolutely true. Okay, we're going to give the final word to me, but before that, to Carla Cabral, your big picture take on what this means for our movement.
I have to say that this is incredible for all animal rights activists and all activists that are fighting for justice for all beings. This is a monumental time, and we are going to continue to fight strong and be brave and make sure that we change this world into a better place for everyone.
Well, and you have helped us so much. I can't overestimate how helpful Carla has been, staying live for literally like 8-10 hours over the last few days. Come to LA, we're going to give you an award, and I promise you that's for reals. I just want to say that I am so happy. When I see those pigs, and we just did a series on Unchained TV called Pig Little Eyes, so I had spent a lot of time with pigs. Simone and I were both in it, and I urge you to watch it on Unchained TV because it's a lot of fun. Beyond that, it's a reality series starring a family of pigs. And you can go to Unchained TV. You can get it for free on your phone and watch it. You can get it on your television, just if you have an Apple TV device, a Roku device, or an Amazon Fire Stick, or you can just watch it online at UnchainedTV.com. But suffice it to say that Simone and I had spent a lot of time with this one family of pigs, Beatrice, Dante, named after the famous medieval love poem, Dante's Inferno, and their babies. And I got to see how emotional, how intelligent, how strategic. I mean, I knew that pigs were the 5th most intelligent species, but boy, did I get an education in just how human their emotions are. And so now I have hope for this world, because sometimes I don't have hope for this world. Sometimes I say, what kind of a world would exist where we would put pigs in gestation crates the size of their bodies, never able to turn around? That is torture. The human race is evil for doing that. This restores my faith in humanity, and that's exactly what Karen said. The jury restored my faith in humanity. You could tell by their questions they cared about pigs and piglets. I think they prove that most people really don't want innocent animals to suffer. And what somebody else here said is, this makes me believe that a vegan world is possible. And I now believe that. Before we go, well, there's more excitement. We're going to go back one more time. Carla, I'm not letting you go yet. There's a big photo shoot right here. Take us there. You have to unmute. There we go.
Everybody, with all of their signs.
Oh, it looks great.
Wow. Yeah, look at that. And you should be in that picture. I feel bad that you're not, but there you go. I think that's the reporter right on the right for the St. George News, taking that photograph of all of the DXE people behind a right to rescue sign, Paul and Wayne right in the middle. I want to get that photo. Wow, how extraordinary that is.
Okay,
wow.
Get ready, everyone.
Okay, on that note, thank you so much for joining our coverage. Please subscribe to Unchained TV. Actually, you don't even need to subscribe. You just get it on your phone. You just put in Unchained TV. We are a global streaming network. And I have to say that aside from one small article in the New York Times that was buried, I have to say, I had to look for it. It wasn't on the front page of the online edition. I'm a subscriber. I had to poke around, go into the science section and scroll all the way down. Okay. So aside from that, there has not been mainstream media coverage. That's why I started with an incredible team of volunteers. We're mostly volunteers, and we don't have any offices. I mean, this is my living room is Unchained TV world headquarters. Okay. That's why we started it, to do an end run around the mainstream media blackout. So I do hope you download Unchained TV on your phone through your app store and also download it on your TV through Amazon Fire Stick, your Roku device, or your Apple TV device. Just put it in the search bar for streaming channels. It pops right up, and spread the word, because we are going to create the vegan CNN. Watch, we're going to do it, but your help is needed. So thank you so very much, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, fantastic panel. Amazing. Heroes all.